Chapter 2246. Okay. Li Xiqing answered and carefully put the pile of paintings into the drawer. Sit down. I want to talk to you. Li Mosen became even more nervous. Such a scene had happened before, but without exception, every time it happened it felt different. This time, Li Xiqing seemed to be a little serious, making it impossible not to tense up and treat him seriously. Li Mosen sat down on the chair in front of Li Xiqing's table. His posture was standard and his back was straight. Li Xiqing knew that he had become used to it, so he didn't care and said, "I heard that you want to get into Kingstown University?" Li Mosen had told Li Jianyue about this before, so he wasn't surprised that he knew. He nodded calmly and said, "Yes, Dad. I want to get into Kingstown University and stay in Kingstown. You should know that with your qualifications and talent, staying in Kingstown University is a bit of a waste." Li Xiqing looked at him with his sharp eyes. Li Mosen couldn't help but straighten his back and said, "I don't want to leave Kingstown." "What?" "Because I grew up in Kingstown. I can't bear to leave." Li Xiqing listened to this and didn't say anything. Just then Su Qinxi made a few cups of calming tea and brought them over. Inexplicably, she felt that the way this father and son interacted was a bit stiff. She quietly brought the tea over and sat next to Li Xiqing, waiting for them to continue the conversation. "Qian," Li Xiqing suddenly said, "help me close the door." Su Qinxi felt that something was wrong, but she still went to close the door. The moment the door was closed, she heard Li Xiqing's voice. "Do you not want to leave Kingstown, or do you not want to leave Ursu?" Li Mosen's heart suddenly felt like it was being fiercely grabbed by something. In just a moment, Li Mosen's back was already covered with a thin layer of sweat. And Su Qinxi was so smart that she immediately understood what he was implying. Her heart was beating fast, and she immediately turned around and looked at Li Xiqing in disbelief. At this moment, Li Xiqing's eyes were sharp as he stared at Li Mosen. The aura of being in a high position for many years was completely revealed at this moment. Even she herself could not quite withstand such coercion. What's more, Mosen was just a child. At this moment, Li Mosen was looking at Li Xiqing in shock. He quickly lowered his eyes to hide his panic and asked, "Dad, is there anything different?" Li Mosen lowered his blue eyes and clenched his fists. But he knew that he looked too guilty now. Under the pressure of Li Xiqing, the secret that she had kept in her heart for so many years had nowhere to hide. She frowned, walked over to him and patted him on the shoulder. Li Xiqing then calmed down a bit. Li Mosen finally felt that he had some breathing space, but at this time the palms of his hands and the back of his back were already oozing sweat, and even his forehead had completely exposed his nervousness. He knew that he was finished. Sure enough, he heard Li Xiqing say, "You knew since you were young that you were not Ursu's biological brother, right?" Mosen pursed his lips. Of course he knew. He had known since he was young. Everyone around him was reminding him that he was not Li Xiqing's biological child. He was just a product of a woman who had committed the most heinous crime and messed around in a foreign country. Chapter 2247. It was for the sake of living a good life in this family. He wanted to integrate into this family and become a real member of this family. He didn't dare to reveal his thoughts about Li Jianyue, for fear that Li Xiqing would drive him away and separate him from Ursu. Li Mosen had been safe and sound for so many years. He didn't expect to be discovered by Li Xiqing at this time. Li Mosen's heart was beating extremely fast. In his memory, he had only felt such fear when he was 5 or 6 years old, when he was held hostage by that crazy woman, Tang Menjing, and his life was hanging by a thread. At this time, such emotions once again shrouded his heart, making it difficult for him to adapt. Li Xiqing saw that he didn't speak and already had an answer in his heart. He said meaningfully, "Mosen." Li Mosen grabbed his thigh with both hands and his heart was already clear. Li Xiqing knew. He knew everything. How could a smart person like Li Xiqing not be able to guess? Li Mosen's heart was filled with despair, but when he heard Li Xiqing's voice, he simply raised his head and said, "Dad, I do know that I am not your biological child, so I don't want to leave Kingstown." "I didn't ask you to leave," Li Xiqing interrupted him. "I just think that you should have a more suitable choice. Go abroad or go to a better university in the country. You can choose. Staying in Kingstown will only waste your talent." "No, Mosen," Su Qinxi said in a gentle voice, "listen to your father." Li Mosen was silent, but on his fair skin, his Adam's apple had already moved up and down a few times. Li Xiqing continued, "You are too close to Ursu. Maybe even you don't know what your feelings for her are. I suggest you go abroad for a few years to calm down." Li Mosen panicked and said, "No, Dad, I only have feelings for Ursu, like a brother and sister. You are not." Li Xiqing's eyes were like an eagle, firmly grasping him as if he could see through his internal organs. All his secrets had been seen through by him. She frowned and said, Ursu has been relying on Mosen since she was young, and Mosen is used to Ursu's pampering. Their relationship is indeed better, but they grew up together, so it's only right that they have a good relationship. What do you think? Yes, we should have a good relationship, but there's something wrong with the look in his eyes, Li Xiqing said with certainty. His voice gradually became stern. Mosen, Ursu only sees you as her brother. She's still very innocent now. She doesn't know anything, so she can't understand the emotions in your eyes. As he spoke, he stood up and quietly approached her. I'm a man. Of course I know what you mean when you look at her. That wasn't the way an older brother looked at his younger sister. Instead, it was the way a man would look at a woman he adored. He was an experienced person, so he naturally knew what was going on. Li Mosen was indeed outstanding, smart, well-behaved, hard-working, and eager to learn. But even so, she was not good enough for Li Xiqing's only daughter. Li Mosen panicked and sat on the chair as if his soul had been sucked out of him. After all, he was the child that he had raised. Seeing Li Mosen like this, Li Xiqing's eyes softened. He said meaningfully, Mosen, you are still young and outstanding enough. Dad will recommend you to a professor at New York Business School. I'll give you a few years to calm down. Mosen is the older brother. Are you sure you want Mosen to be with Ursu? Are you sure? Chapter 2248. New York Business School. I'll give you a few years. Calm down. Every word echoed in Li Mosen's mind several times. The echoes shook him to the brink of collapse. Li Mosen stood up abruptly and shouted, I don't want to go, Dad, I want to stay in Kingstown. It would be a waste of your talent to stay in Kingstown. Li Xiqing's eyes turned cold again. He looked at Li Mosen in front of him and said coldly, You are very talented in physics. You can choose an excellent physics school or you can go directly to my alma mater. I will arrange the best education for you. Li Mosen wanted to say something, but then Su Qianxi came forward and gently held him. Her voice was soft and comforting as she said, Mosen, your father is doing this for your own good. Calm down first. There was a moment of silence. Then Li Mosen's voice was almost cold and emotionless. It was eerily calm. He asked, For my own good? His voice was cold and very stiff. Su Qianxi was shocked by Li Mosen's behavior. She held him and stood beside him. She didn't know when this child had grown up, even to the point where she needed to look up to him. Su Qianxi was slightly shocked. She reached out and gently comforted him. Yes, Mosen, Dad and Mom are doing this for your own good. Your father just doesn't want your talent to be buried. Don't give him excuses. Li Mosen gently pushed Su Qianxi away and looked at Li Xiqing coldly. Do you not want me to be buried, or do you not want your daughter to be coveted by the son of your enemy? Li Xiqing's face suddenly darkened. What did you say? Li Mosen met Li Xiqing's eyes and instinctively lowered his eyes. But in the next moment, Li Mosen realized what he was doing. He was slightly startled. He lowered his head and clenched his fists. He said in a low voice, I know who my biological mother is. I know that woman destroyed your family back then. Since I was a child, people around me have always reminded me that I can have everything I have today because of my mother's kindness. I can stand here because my mother saved my life twice from that woman. Li Mosen suddenly laughed sarcastically. He looked at the intricate carpet under his feet and said in a low voice, I've been your son for so many years. Now, I don't want to be your son now, Dad. But before he said anything, Su Qianxi covered his mouth. Su Qianxi's hands had a faint aroma of tea, mixed with her unique scent, forming a mother's scent. Li Mosen's eyes trembled, and he lowered his head to meet Su Qianxi's gaze. Su Qianxi was now 40 years old, but the years still left no trace on her face. Her face was 80% similar to Li Jinyue's. Su Qianxi's eyes were a little watery. With a little fear, she shouted at him, Mosen. Calling his name, she burst into tears. Li Mosen was shocked. It was only then that he realized how hurtful his words were. Li Xiqing's masseter muscles were twisted. He quickly walked over and pulled Su Qianxi over. Looking at the young man in front of him, who was already comparable to his height, Li Xiqing said in a slow voice, Continue. Su Qianxi's voice was already trembling. Mosen, whether it is in the past or now to us, you are no different from Desu and Ursu. Chapter 2249. Su Qianxi's voice was a little loud, and it poured into Li Mosen's ears. He was stunned and then fell silent. Li Xiqing looked at the child in front of him who he had raised with his own hands and narrowed his eyes. What? Are you done? Li Mosen pursed his lips and clenched his fists. He nodded at Li Xiqing. I'm done. Li Xiqing reached out and patted Su Qianxi beside him. He said word by word, since you're done, go back to sleep. Li Mosen clenched his fists even tighter. He bowed slightly to them and turned to leave. Just at the moment when he turned the door handle, Su Qianxi stopped him. Mosen. Li Mosen paused. Su Qianxi suddenly felt a little sad and whispered, no one doesn't want their child to be good. You are our child. What your father just said to you is the best plan. You are too young now and don't know what you want. What you need most now is not our affirmation but calmness. After a period of time, you will think through a lot of things. Li Mosen listened to this and paused. He finally turned the door handle and took a step forward. It was not. They did not know what he wanted at all. He liked Ursu not because he was impulsive. Ever since he was young he was well aware of his own background. Therefore he wanted to repay the favor by doing something that he could do within his abilities. But he did not know when he started to be obsessed with this feeling of being needed. The innocent and lovely Ursu always looked at him with her round eyes and smiled. She called him obediently and cutely, Brother Mosen, I want this. Brother Mosen is the best, Brother Mosen is of course the best person. I like Brother Mosen the most. Mosen walked up the stairs absent-mindedly. When he thought of Ursu's face, the gloominess on his face lessened slightly. Even his gaze softened. And at this moment, there was a slight sound of the door opening upstairs. Li Jinrui's little head popped out. When she saw Li Mosen she blinked and said, Brother Mosen, what's wrong? Why did Dad ask you to go? When Li Mosen saw Li Jinue's innocent and adorable face, the gloomy look on his face disappeared the moment he saw her. He walked up to her and gently pressed her head. Why aren't you asleep yet? Although Li Jinue was clumsy and her reaction was a little slow, at this moment she could also sense Mosen's unhappiness. What's wrong? Did Daddy scold you? Li Mosen's gaze softened. He looked at her and nudged her. Let's go in first. Let's talk inside. Li Jinue quickly jumped back and then opened the door to let him in. When Li Mosen came in he wanted to close the door, but in the next moment, a wave of bitterness poured into his heart. After hesitating for a moment, he opened the door and walked in. On the other hand, Li Jinue was a little surprised. Hey, why didn't you close the door? As he spoke he walked up and closed the door behind him. Then he turned around and jumped back to his bed. What's wrong? What do you want to talk to me about? The soft little mattress trembled as she sat down. It looked soft. Li Mosen said, if I go abroad, will you miss me? Chapter 2250. Li Jinrui's big eyes were filled with questions. She looked at him and realized that Li Mosen had an indescribable feeling today. There was an indescribable emotion in his deep gaze. Li Jinrui's heart felt slightly lifted. She was actually a little nervous. Is that so? Li Mosen did not answer. Instead he asked, do you want me to go abroad? Do you want me to go abroad? Do you want me to? Perhaps even Li Mosen himself did not realize that at this moment, his hand was already on his knee. A pair of eyes were staring straight at Li Jinrui. The anticipation in his eyes had almost turned into desire, forcing her to give him the answer that he longed for deeply in his heart. Li Jinrui also noticed that there was something wrong with Li Mosen's gaze, but she was not afraid. Instead, she tilted her head and said, I don't want you to go abroad, but I know that with Brother Mosen's intelligence and ability, you can definitely stand higher and further. A small kingstown can't restrict you. Li Mosen had originally thought that with Li Jinrui's usual temperament, she would only say yes or no. However, the words that came after were exactly the same as what Li Xiqing had said. Li Mosen did not know what he was feeling at this moment. He looked at her and quietly loosened his fists. Suddenly he clenched them tightly. Looking at her, his gaze unconsciously deepened. He asked softly, so, do you also think that I should leave? Li Jinrui noticed Mosen's unhappiness and immediately shook her head. She said, this is not leaving. How can this be considered as leaving? You see, brother has been studying in the capital for so many years. But in my heart, brother will always be brother. Although he went to the north to study, which is very far away from me, I also know that the education in Kingstown is not as good as that in the capital. Even the best school is unable to develop brother's talent. That's why Dad and Mom sent brother to the capital back then. No, they just want Daesu to spend more time with your grandparents. Li Mosen's tone was very firm, and he believed it without a doubt. No, it's not what you think. It's one thing for Grandpa and Grandma to want someone to accompany them. That's just one factor. But Dad's biggest plan is to give brother the best education. Look, if Dad and Mom hadn't sent brother to Kingstown back then, he wouldn't have become the youngest master's student in the world of scientific research. Now, the best scientific research in the country is in Kingstown. That's why Dad let brother and brother Chu come back to study. Li Mosen had never thought of this, nor had he heard anyone mention it. He had thought many times that Yu Chulin and Li Jianxian were homesick and wanted to stay in Kingstown. That was why they had used the best excuse to come back to Kingstown for scientific research. Li Xiqing just acquiesced. But now Li Jianyue told him that in fact, Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi had already arranged everything tacitly. Li Mosen recalled that when he was very young, Li Xiqing had asked him more than once, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" At that time, Li Mosen was still young, and his answer was different every time. Sometimes, his answer was that he wanted to be a scientist because scientists were great. Sometimes, his answer was that he wanted to be a doctor because he didn't want illness to torture humans. Later, Li Mosen asked him again, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" Chapter 2251. In fact, Li Mosen was also crying directly. At that time, old master Li Sun had just passed away. Li Mosen quickly wiped his tears and sobbed, "I want to be a god so that I can protect the people I want to protect. I won't let death take away the people I care about." At that time, Li Xiqing looked at him quietly for a while, but did not say anything. He only hugged him in his arms and patted him silently. Li Mosen could not stop his tears at that time, and his heart was even more sad. They were finally going to drive him away, weren't they? After all, he was the son of the enemy, and they were not as close to him as they were to their own children. In this family, other than Su Qianxi, only Grandpa Li Sun loved him the most. Now that Grandpa Li Sun had passed away, and Su Qianxi did not have her own opinions, Li Xiqing had been harmed so badly by Tang Menjing. How could he allow the son of such a person to be by his side? He was afraid that it was premeditated to get rid of him. But because everyone knew that they had adopted him, it was reasonable for them to be responsible for his future. That was why they kept asking him what he wanted to do in the future. It was convenient. They could give him a good path for his future now, and then they could get rid of him openly. The more Li Mosen thought about it, the sadder he became. Finally, on that quiet night, he cried his heart out. Fortunately, from then on, Li Xiqing never asked him again. Li Mosen did not know if Li Xiqing knew what he was thinking, but from then on, he subconsciously stayed away from him. Although he called him Dad, his heart was gradually drifting away. Perhaps Li Xiqing also noticed it, so he cooperated and stopped asking about Li Xiqing's life and future aspirations. Li Mosen finally felt relieved. From then on, his world was subconsciously only Su Qianxi and Li Ersu. Su Qianxi was gentle and kind, and Li Jianyue was pure and innocent. He had long decided to protect these two women to the end. But he never expected that Li Jianyue would say such a thing. Could it be that he had misunderstood Li Xiqing? Li Mosen knew that Li Jianyue was not a person who would lie, so he asked, "Did Dad ask you to say these words? Why did Dad tell me all this?" "I heard this from Grandma and Grandpa. In the past, I couldn't bear for brother to go to school. Grandpa hugged me and explained it to me. Only then did I know that Dad and Mom sent brother to school in the capital for his own good. Accompanying Grandma and Grandpa was also one of their goals. But more importantly, they wanted brother to stand out." Li Jianyue was baffled. Li Mosen pursed his lips and asked softly, "Did Dad just call me to the study?" "I know, and then?" Li Jianyue realized that Li Mosen's repressed emotions seemed to have loosened. She was elated and asked, "Did he let you go abroad?" "Yes, he wants me to go to New York Business School." "Wow!" Li Jianyue exclaimed. "That's Dad's alma mater. Daddy really likes that place. A while ago, Big Brother said that he wanted to go there to study, but Daddy said that he was not suitable and wouldn't let Big Brother go." Li Mosen's face was full of doubt. "Really?" Chapter 2252. Li Mosen looked at Li Jianyue's serious expression and pursed his lips. Was that what he said? "Oh, Dad." Li Jianyue looked at him and nodded. "Yes, it was Dad who said it. Mom said that although Brother Mosen is smart, his personality isn't as cheerful as mine. She asked me to spend more time with you and then take you out to have fun." Li Jianyue walked over to Li Mosen and said, "Mom said that although Brother Mosen is smart, his personality isn't as cheerful as mine." Li Mosen paused for a moment and stood rooted to the ground. Li Jianyue stood in front of him and pinched his nose with 2 fingers. She said, "You can't do without me at all. Look at how long I haven't looked at you and you're already so unhappy." Li Mosen's nose was pinched. At this moment, his heart was itching. Just as Li Jianyue's hand was about to leave, He finally couldn't help but reach out and grab her small hand. Li Jianyue was stunned. The next second her body felt light. Li Jianyue exclaimed out of habit. The next moment she was already in Li Mosen's arms. Li Jianyue was pressed on his shoulder. She could clearly smell the smell of hot pot on his body. Li Jianyue blinked and turned to look at him. Li Mosen also turned his head slightly. The two of them faced each other, less than half a fist apart. At such a close distance, Li Mosen's nose was filled with the fresh fragrance of her body after she had bathed. Li Mosen unconsciously sniffed. The fragrance seemed to drill into his heart. While it made him feel relaxed and happy, he couldn't help but feel restless. Li Mosen's heartbeat sped up unconsciously. Looking at her pink cheeks and bright eyes, he felt as if his heart had been melted by her. Her ignorance and innocence made him feel as if his heart had been melted by her. Li Jianyue seemed to have seen something novel and moved closer to Li Mosen. Li Mosen's face turned red from his face to his ears. Even the bottom of his neck felt hot. His nerves seemed to be stretched taut. When Li Jianyue approached him, his body was so stiff that he didn't dare to move. Li Jianyue didn't notice Li Mosen's stiffness at all. Her eyes were attracted to the novelty she had discovered. Li Jianyue stopped less than 2 centimeters in front of him. She suddenly reached out and touched his eyebrow. "Brother Mosen, why do you have a mole on your eyebrow?" Li Mosen only felt her fingers touching his face softly. That soft touch made his heart palpitate. Li Mosen had never been so nervous before. For the first time, he didn't know what to do in front of his sister, whom he had been with for more than 10 years. Meeting her gaze, Li Mosen suppressed the nervousness in his heart and said softly, "I've had it for a long time. It was just like liking you." He didn't know when it started to appear, but one day he suddenly realized its existence. "Wow, I've been with you every day but I didn't notice," Li Jianyue said with a curious expression. "It's all because your eyebrows are too thick. I can only see them when I'm so close." Li Mosen looked at her red lips and his throat tightened. Then he pushed her away unnaturally. "It means that you don't care about me." Chapter 2253. Li Mosen smiled and reached out to touch her little nose. "You only know how to quibble. If you didn't find it, then you didn't find it. There is no if." "But didn't I find it now?" Li Jianyue said confidently. "And I saw it very clearly." During the conversation, even Li Jianyue herself did not realize that the distance between them was getting closer and closer. Li Mosen was a little stiff. He subconsciously raised his hand and gently hugged her. "Yes." Li Jianyue did not feel anything wrong. "You, knock knock." There was a knock on the door. Li Mosen almost reflexively let go of her. And Li Jianyue did not notice the speed of Li Mosen's movement. She turned to look at the door, then stood up straight and walked toward the door. She asked, "Who is it?" "Open the door." It was Li Jianxian's voice. Li Jianyue opened the door and said with a strange face, "Oh, it's rare that my brother would come to my small room." Li Jianxian had already taken a shower and was wearing dark blue pajamas. His short black hair was half dry, and his phoenix eyes were the same as Li Xiqing's. He looked a little lazy. He looked at his sister in front of him, who was like a child for 10 years. He did not know what expression he had on his face and looked inside. Li Mosen had already walked out. When he saw it was Li Jianxian, he just looked away. Everyone was too familiar with each other and they were used to all kinds of eye contact. Unexpectedly, Li Jianxian was actually looking for Li Mosen. "Mosen, come to my room." When she heard this, Li Jianyue was unhappy. She put her hands on her hips and puffed out her chest. She looked fierce and shouted, "Hey, why did you come to my room to look for Brother Mosen? Can't you look for your beautiful, lovely, and kind sister?" "I only have one sister. She doesn't have the description you said," Li Jianxian said with a face full of disgust. He reached out and gently pushed her away. "Get out of the way." Li Jianyue stood in front of Mosen angrily. "Don't go. Brother doesn't know how to talk at all. I won't let him go." Okay, you are naive, you are cute, go away." "Li Daisu." Li Jianxian glanced at Mosen and then turned to leave. Li Mosen gently placed his hand on Li Jianyue's shoulder and quickly said, "I'll go for a while." Li Jianyue was furious, but she also knew that if Li Jianxian had nothing to do, he would not come to her room to look for Mosen. But what could it be? Li Jianyue's eyes darted around as she quietly followed behind them. As for Li Jianxian, when he brought Li Mosen into his room, he inadvertently raised his head and found Li Jianyue, who was trying to eavesdrop. Without batting an eyelid, Li Jianxian said, "Mosen, you go in first." Of course, Li Mosen also knew that Li Jianyue was behind them. He couldn't help but smile when he saw the little head that was trying hard to hide in the corner but still revealed some clues. Before Li Jianxian entered the door, he said in a voice that was neither too loud nor too soft, "It seems that Granny Rong made some sweet water and left it in the kitchen. Let's go have some later." Li Jianyue's ears twitched. Sugar water? Just as she was wondering when Granny Rong made the sugar water, the next moment she heard the sound of Li Jianxian closing the door. Not only did he close the door, he actually locked it. Chapter 2254. When she reached the kitchen, Li Jianyue realized that she had been tricked by Li Jianxian. Li Jianyue stomped her feet in anger, but there was nothing she could do. On the other side, Li Jianxian closed the door and turned to look at Mosen. "What did Dad say to you when he asked you to go to the study?" "About college." Li Jianxian nodded as if he had expected it. "I knew that Dad wouldn't allow you to go to Kingstown University. I guess Dad would ask you to go to Capital University or New York University. He wants me to go to New York Business School. That's within my expectations." Li Jianxian's face was full of relief. "Because I've already made it clear to Dad that I don't want to go home to do business. I just want to study hard and develop in my current professional field." "When did you tell Dad?" "I told him a long time ago. Maybe 2 years ago? 3 years ago?" "What reaction did he have?" Li Jianxian shrugged. "What reaction?" "He didn't have any reaction at all." Li Mosen found it a little hard to believe. "What kind of reaction is that?" "He just said, 'I got it,' and that was it." Li Mosen frowned. Li Xiqing was different from others. The Li Corporation was a huge enterprise and it was all built by Li Xiqing alone. Other than the 4 years when he was away, there was absolutely no one else to make it what it was now. But now Li Xiqing did not force Li Jianxian to learn business, but instead asked the son of his enemy to learn it. What did that mean? Li Mosen's heart beat faster, and the ideas in his mind became more and more daring. Could it be that Li Xiqing wanted him to inherit the family business? This idea that Li Mosen had never even dared to think about popped up here. It was simply crazy. Li Mosen suppressed the terrible speculation in his heart and looked at Li Jianxian. "What does he mean? Can't you tell what he means?" Li Jianxian laughed. "He told me to study hard and to develop in my own field. The family business is a small matter. He can still manage it now. When he can't manage it anymore, there will always be someone who can take over." After a pause, Li Jianxian saw the disbelief on Li Mosen's face and teased, "Anyway, he wants you to learn business. You are also his son, so there's nothing wrong with letting you learn business, right?" "I'm just a foster son. An adopted son is still a son." Li Jianxian patted him on the shoulder. "Keep it up. It's not easy for Dad to get to where he is today. Don't let it fall in your hands in the future." Li Mosen was quiet for a moment, and his mood was a little complicated. This complicated feeling lasted for a long time. When he returned to his room, washed up, and went to bed, his head was full of what Li Jianxian had just said. Did he really think so? Li Mosen didn't really want these things. He just felt that such a huge family business should be inherited by his own son. He shouldn't pin his hopes on an adopted son. Moreover, this adopted son was the son of his enemy, a bastard whose biological father was unknown. Li Mosen stared at the ceiling in the dark. He didn't know how long it had been, but he still didn't feel sleepy. When he woke up the next day, the dark circles under his eyes were particularly obvious on his fair face. Chapter 2255. Li Jianrui was a little surprised. She looked at Li Mosen and asked, "Brother Mosen, did you steal last night?" Li Mosen coughed softly and turned his face away. "Go and eat." Li Jianrui saw him like this and immediately leaned over. "Ah, is it because Daddy scolded you last night that you couldn't sleep?" Li Mosen looked down at her. Li Jianrui looked sympathetic. "Don't be sad. Daddy scolded you for your own good. Daddy doesn't usually scold people. Look, Daddy has never scolded me." "That's because you're too stupid. There's no use scolding you." Li Jianxian's melodious voice sounded with a hint of mockery. "Are you proud of yourself?" Li Jianrui puffed up her cheeks and said angrily, "No way. Are you jealous?" "I'm not." Li Jianxian walked over and lifted his hand to clamp Li Jianrui under his armpit. "Let's go eat." "Hey, let go. You smell like a fox. I'll squash you if you spout nonsense again." "I'm not spouting nonsense. Smell it yourself." Li Jianxian laughed angrily and pressed her head further under his armpit. "Help me smell it." "Wretch." Li Jianrui pretended to vomit, but she still couldn't escape the situation of being carried by Li Jianxian. The 17-year-old Li Jianxian was more than one. 7 meters tall. Coupled with his regular exercise, it was effortless for him to carry the petite Li Jianrui. In the end, Li Jianxian ended up at the dining table. When she turned around and saw Yu Chulin walking over slowly, she shouted, "Brother Chu, quickly control my brother. He's starting to bully me again." Yu Chulin sat down casually and chuckled. "Really? Why didn't I see it? Sob sob sob, you're in cahoots. You're all bullying me." Li Jianrui cried. When she saw Li Mosen walking over from behind, she said, "Brother Mosen, sob sob." Li Mosen's lips curled up. He reached out and tapped her nose. "All right, with your acting skills, you can be an actress. Where do you want to go later?" Li Jianrui tilted her head and suddenly thought of a place. "Let's go to the amusement park we went to last time, okay?" "Amusement park?" "Yeah, it's the one with the Ferris wheel and the one with the Kumaman bear selling rabbit ears." Li Jianui's eyes sparkled. "We went there in the evening. Wouldn't it be more fun during the day?" Li Mosen frowned. Of course he knew that place. He also remembered the Kumaman bear that sold rabbit ears the last time he saw it. However, the way that the Kumaman bear looked at them did not seem normal. It was as if he had other emotions, as if he knew them. Li Mosen didn't like that feeling very much. However, seeing that Li Jianrui was so interested, Li Mosen couldn't bear to reject her. After hesitating for a moment, he suggested, "I know a similar place. Shall we go somewhere else?" Li Jianrui shook her head. "I think that place is very good. It's close to home and we can eat hot pot. When we're done we can go and eat hot pot." Speaking of hot pot, Li Jianrui was almost drooling. Unlike the rest of the family, Li Jianrui really liked eating hot pot. She was almost obsessed with it. In addition, there was also ice cream and all kinds of fried snacks. She liked all of them very much. Chapter 2256. Of course not. He was fed by Grandpa and Grandma. I didn't ask them to feed him. Granny Rong's cooking is nutritionally balanced. Nanny Rong, who was busy at the side, smiled when she heard Li Jianui's words. She was very pleased. She had been in the Li family for so many years and had long regarded these children as her own grandchildren. Nanny Rong was naturally very happy to be praised by them. However, she still said, "Let's talk about this here. Don't say things like that in front of Moyun. Otherwise he will be in a bad mood. Granny Rong, we have to talk to him more so that he can actively lose weight. Otherwise, if he continues to gain weight like this, he will be ruined," Li Jianrui said firmly. Just as they were talking, the doorbell rang. Nanny Rong quickly went to open the door. It was Li Moyun. Li Moyun's expression was a little tragic at this time. He moved his fat body in and opened his hands to the sky. He shouted loudly, "I, Li Hansen, am back again." "Hey, who is Li Hansen?" Li Jianrui turned to look at Li Mosen while eating breakfast. "I don't know Li Hansen." "Brother Mosen, quickly chase him away." "Hey," Li Moyun said angrily. "Li Ersu, don't go too far. I haven't settled the score with you for live streaming hot pot last night." "What score?" "I just felt sorry for you at home, so I wanted to share it with you." Li Moyun said angrily. "You still dare to say that? I was hungry all night because of you. Look at my dark circles, dark circles." Li Moyun pried his eyelids open and moved closer to her. "How pitiful. Such dark circles are all your fault. Wow, you really have dark circles. But if you were hungry, wouldn't you have asked Grandpa and Grandma to cook for you? You still dare to say that?" Li Moyun was about to cry. "It's all because of you. Grandpa and Grandma started to think that I was fat when they saw how thin you were. They said that I was like a pig and forced me to lose weight. From now on, I'm not allowed to have meat for lunch. I can only eat vegetables every day. What have I done?" "Then you were hungry all night?" Yu Chulin suddenly asked. Li Moyun felt even worse. "I was so hungry that I couldn't take it anymore, so Grandpa gave me a piece of hardtack." "Ha!" Li Jianrui laughed out loud. "This is too tragic." "Ha ha." The corners of Li Mosen's lips curled up. Li Jianxian replied, "It's only right. Grandpa and Grandma were right. Given your physique, if you continue to gain weight, it'll be difficult to lose weight in the future. It's hard to reduce it now." "That's true." Li Moyun felt that the whole world was against him. He sat down at the dining table dejectedly. Was it his fault that he was fat? Did he want to be fat? He didn't want to, okay. It was his grandparents who had fed him to make him fat, but in the end he was despised by them. The more Li Moyun thought about it, the more aggrieved he felt. He grabbed a piece of bread and started munching on it. However, Yu Chulin grabbed her hand before she could bite him. Li Moyun was stunned for a moment. However, Yu Chulin had a teasing look on his face as he asked with a smile, "Didn't you eat before you came?" Of course Li Moyan ate it. However, he only ate 2 steamed buns, a cup of soy milk and a fried dough stick. It wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Although he wasn't hungry at the moment, he was sure that his stomach would be growling in less than an hour. Chapter 2257. How is that possible? Grandma wouldn't have let him out if he hadn't eaten. Brother Chu, he's lying to you, Li Jianhua shouted from behind. Yu Chulin looked at Li Moyun's expression and removed his hand. Aren't we going out to play later? Don't fill your stomach after eating. Let's go to the buffet later. Li Moyun's eyes lit up and he quickly nodded his head. He retracted his hand and said honestly, actually, I've already eaten. I'll go on an empty stomach so that I can eat more when we go to the buffet later. Ah. Yu Chulin smiled faintly. Li Jianchen reached out and patted his shoulder gently. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. After breakfast, Li Moyun eagerly caught up with Li Jianyue and Li Mosen. However, when he turned around, he realized that Li Jianchen and Yu Chulin were not with him. He asked Li Mosen in confusion, "Where are brother Chu and second brother?" The eldest brother was Li Mosen, so the second brother was naturally Li Jianchen. Li Mosen looked at him and answered honestly, "I don't know." Li Moyun felt that something was wrong. "Didn't you say that you were going to the buffet together?" "Did we?" Li Mosen looked at him with a faint smile. "Ursu and I were going to play. Chu and Daesu are the ones going to the buffet." "Did you hear wrongly?" Li Moyun was stunned. "Wait, what? You're not going together? Who told you that?" Li Jianyue laughed. "Let's go. I'll take you out to play." "Hey, I don't want to. I want to go to the buffet." "Your buffet is long gone." Li Mosen looked at him sympathetically. "It seems that Daesu and Chu are going to visit a professor's house today. They even brought gifts. They might have lunch at the professor's house. If it's a buffet, it'll be at least in the evening." Li Moyun's heart was filled with anger at being deceived. He shouted, "That's too much. I didn't expect brother Chu to be such a person. Ursu, let's go." "What did you call me?" Li Jianyue raised her eyebrows and put on airs. When Li Moyun saw this, he immediately smiled apologetically and said, "Sister, my dear sister, where are you planning to go?" Li Jianyue enjoyed the feeling of being called sister. Although Li Moyun often thought that she was stupid and didn't want to call her sister at all. But now that he was called out, he felt light in his heart. He said proudly, "To the amusement park." "Ha." Li Moyun was a little disappointed. "Why is it an amusement park again? Aren't you sick of going there every day?" "I don't go every day. I rarely go, okay?" Li Jianyue reached out and patted him. "Are you going? Go." The three siblings soon arrived at the amusement park that Li Jianyue had been longing for. The amusement park had been quietly renovated. Compared to the last time Li Jianyue saw it, some places seemed to have changed. There were many more dolls around. In addition to the Kumaman, there was also a Pikachu, Whitey, and a giant doll that Li Jianyue had seen before but couldn't name. Because it was the weekend, there were many children around. They surrounded the big dolls, holding lollipops and ice cream in their hands. They chased each other and laughed happily. Almost subconsciously, Li Jianyue's eyes fell on the Kumaman as soon as she entered. Chapter 2258. Li Jianyue looked at the big stupid bear and blinked her eyes. She wanted to go forward to greet it, but she was afraid of mistaking it for someone else. Li Mosen noticed her gaze and his eyes darkened. He put his hand on her shoulder and asked, "What are you looking at?" "I'm looking for," Li Moyun suddenly shouted from behind, "I want to eat ice cream." "No, it's the easiest to put on weight." Li Jianyue nudged Li Mosen and said, "Hurry up and pull Moyun back. If he continues to eat, he will become fat." Li Mosen raised his hand and put it around her neck. Then he walked towards the chubby Li Moyun and said, "You can eat it later. We just finished dinner. How are you going to eat the buffet if you eat ice cream now?" When Li Moyun heard the word buffet, he suddenly became energetic and said, "Buffet." Li Jianyue blinked her eyes. If it was a buffet, wouldn't Li Moyun eat even more? How could he lose weight if he continued to eat like this? But then Li Jianyue received a look from Li Mosen. Li Jianyue understood and immediately felt some sympathy for Li Moyun. At this time, Li Moyun was still immersed in the surprise of the buffet. He was still excitedly thinking about which restaurant to eat at. The meat would be better and the desserts would be more suitable. Thinking about it made him drool and his stomach shrink. Li Moyun decided to digest it first. On the other side, Li Mosen looked at Li Jianyue and asked, "What are you looking for just now?" "Oh, I'm looking for my classmate. He works here part-time and comes to work every day after school to earn money. Li Jinyue's big eyes fell on the crowd in front of her again. Her eyes moved to the Kumamon bear again. Do you remember that bear? I bought kitten ears from him last time. Of course Li Mosun remembered. The last time he came here, he remembered that the Kumamon had been looking at them. It was either looking at Li Jinyue or him. Li Mosun was very sensitive to people's gazes. At this moment, he looked at the Kumamon and narrowed his eyes. At this time, the Kumamon Kun was swaying, looking charmingly naive. It was surrounded by children, holding a handful of balloons and small toys in its hands. It sent them out one by one, and after the parents scanned the QR code, it waved to the children. The children were very happy. After waving goodbye to the Kumamon, they quickly grabbed the balloons and walked away. However, after the first wave of children left, a new wave of children surrounded it. The Kumamon Kun was very busy. Li Jinyue looked at the busy doll and said, I don't know if it's him. I can't see his face and the things he's selling are different from the last time. He looks really busy. Li Mosun pursed his lips. Are you on good terms with him? I didn't like him at first. I thought that he was a delinquent. He didn't do well in school and liked to doze off in class. He always looked like he hadn't woken up all day. But a few days ago, I finally found out that he didn't sleep enough because he wanted to earn money. His father didn't give him pocket money because of his stepmother. His father also didn't allow him to draw. In fact, his drawings are very good. Let me show you. Li Jinyue turned her head to look at Li Mosun and blinked. I didn't like him at first. Li Jinyue had removed Quan Jingyi's WeChat from the blacklist. Quan Jingyi had even sent her a few portraits. Chapter 2259. Seeing the surprise on Li Mosun's face, Li Jinyue was a little happy and asked, I didn't lie to you, did I? It's really great. Li Jinyue's expression was a little proud, as if it was something worth showing off. Seeing this, Li Mosun unconsciously tightened his lips, and a trace of gloominess flashed across his eyes. Not far away, the Kumamon was surrounded by children all the time, collecting money from time to time, handing over the QR code and then taking small gifts. There was no free time at all. It seemed that the Kumamon didn't notice them at all and didn't even look at them. There were so many part-time people every day, so it was not a coincidence that Quan Jingyi was here today. But even so, Li Mosun still felt very uncomfortable in his heart. He put his arm around Li Jinyue's shoulder and moved her eyes away invisibly. He said calmly, there are too many people here. Let's go and play something else. Li Jinyue looked at the Kumamon and saw that it really didn't seem to have time to talk to her at all. Then she nodded and said, well, let's see if he is my classmate later. Li Mosun's lips tightened. He didn't say anything and turned around. Li Moyun saw something fun and shouted from afar, Brother Mosun, come quickly. Let's line up here. If we wait any longer there will be more people. Because there were many people on the weekend, there were a lot of people waiting in line in the amusement park. Li Jinyue also knew that there were fewer people at this time, so she quickly ran to Li Moyun and shouted, coming. Then she suddenly stopped and turned to Mosun and said, Brother Mosun, I want to eat ice cream. It was near noon and the sun was getting more and more scorching. At this moment, Mosun also felt a little cold, so he nodded. Then Li Jinyue turned around and ran to her brother to line up, and soon she was behind Li Moyun. Li Mosun withdrew his gaze from Li Jinyue's back, and then his eyes fell on the Kumamon again. The Kumamon seemed to be finally busy. After sending away the last batch of children, it had a moment of respite. It touched its full pockets with satisfaction. When it turned around it seemed to see Li Mosun and paused for a moment. Then it spread out its hands and pointed to a pile of little things in front of it as if asking. Li Mosun shook his head slightly and quickly turned to leave. After buying 3 ice creams, Li Jinyue and Li Moyun had already lined up inside. When they saw Li Mosun coming over, the two of them quickly waved at him. After apologizing to the people around them and greeting them, they let Li Mosun cut the line and come in. She ate the ice cream contentedly. Suddenly, Li Jinyue's phone vibrated. He picked it up. It was WeChat. Quan Jingyi, you're at the amusement park? Li Mosun took advantage of his height to take a look. When he saw Quan Jingyi's name, his mood was already terrible. Li Moyun was a little taller than Li Jinyue. When he saw the name and the content of the message, he immediately screamed, Hey, who is this? Li Ersu, are you in love? Li Jinyue replied, How is that possible? They're just classmates. Don't you have female classmates too? That's different. Does he want to chase you? Chapter 2260. Romance Chinese Network. The latest chapter of the 99th divorce was updated as soon as possible. Why not? After saying that, Li Jianyue lowered her head and quickly replied to Quan Jingyao. Yes, where are you? I don't see you. Before the message could be sent, the phone had been taken away from her hand. Li Mosen calmly put her phone into his pocket and said to Li Moyun, don't bring your phone with you when you play the game. Give me your phone. Li Moyun was surprised and said, Brother Mosen, aren't you going in with us? Li Mosen looked up at the roller coaster and said, I'm afraid of heights. Liar. Thinking of the last time, Li Jianyue immediately said, we played this together last time. After saying that, she pouted and looked up at him in disbelief. Do you not want to play with us anymore? Li Moyun pursed his lips and smiled. He rubbed the top of her head and said, no, go quickly. The staff is urging us. The staff was indeed urging them. Li Moyun couldn't wait to shove the phone into Li Mosen's hand and grabbed Li Jianyue's arm. Ursu, go quickly. Let Brother Mosen accompany us in the next project. Li Jianyue was dragged into the roller coaster by Li Moyun. At first she was still concerned about Mosen. After sitting on the roller coaster, she and Li Moyun were so excited that they forgot everything else. The roller coaster was accompanied by the screams of young men and women as it passed in front of Li Mosen. The phone in his hand suddenly vibrated again. Li Mosen clicked on Li Jianyue's phone and saw that it was another message from Quan Jingyi. Quan Jingyi, where are you now? I'm done with my work. I'll go find you. Looking at Quan Jingyi's WeChat profile picture, Li Mosen's gaze became more and more gloomy. He clenched the phone in his hand and thought for a moment. He imitated Li Jianyue's tone and replied, I want to accompany my brother. I don't want to play with you. After sending it, he immediately deleted the message and only left the message that Quan Jingyi had sent previously. He didn't know if he was really hurt by this message. Quan Jingyi didn't reply to Li Jianyue's message even after they finished playing. Although Li Moyun was fat, deep down he was a lively little fatty who liked excitement. After playing the roller coaster, he couldn't wait to drag Li Jianyue and Li Mosen to play other exciting projects. Looking at the happy Li Jianyue, Li Mosen was in a good mood and accompanied the two of them to play the next game. By noon, Li Moyun's interest was completely taken away by the food and he made a fuss about going to the buffet. Li Mosen took the two of them to the restaurant in the amusement park. Since it was the weekend, the restaurant was full of people. Moreover, the buffet that Li Moyun had been longing for wasn't here. When he saw the restaurant, Li Moyun immediately grabbed Li Ursu and Li Mosen's hands and shouted, Ah, where's the buffet? Big whore. Li Jianyue was indignant. She put her hands on her hips and said, I'll eat this today. Li Moyun was exasperated. But you promised to have a buffet this morning? Li Jianyue giggled as she took a step forward and said, I didn't promise you anything. Li Moyun was dumbfounded and suddenly remembered that it was Li Jianxian who had promised to have a buffet with him. Li Moyun instantly felt as if he had been cheated. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He turned to look at Li Mosen and cried out, Brother Mosen. Li Mosen said seriously, if we go out now, we'll have to buy another ticket to come in. I don't want to. Li Moyun was about to cry. I want to eat a buffet. Li Moyun. Li Jianyue rarely put on the airs of an older sister. If you continue eating, you'll really become fat like a pig. Li Mosen ignored Li Moyun's opinion and turned to line up in front to get a number. There were many people in the queue. When Li Mosen got the number, there were already more than 10 tables in front of them even if he came early. When he came back with the number, he didn't know when, but there was a tall young man beside Li Jianyue. Chapter 2261. Romance Chinese Network. The latest chapter of the 99th divorce was updated as soon as possible. Looking at the young man's back, Li Mosen immediately felt a sense of crisis. It was an indescribable feeling as if his treasure was being coveted. Li Mosen hid the expression on his face and walked forward silently. When he walked in front of her, he saw Li Jianyue looking very excited. She tilted her head and gestured with her hands to pretend to be a bunny. Her big black eyes were clear and pure, and her fair and tender face looked very cute. Quan Jingyi, who was standing in front of her, stared at her with a slightly roguish smile on his face. Li Mosen could empathize with that kind of look. It was the look of being attracted to the opposite sex. Brother Mosen, you're back. Li Moyun, who was standing at the side, saw him first and waved at him. Li Jianyue and Quan Jingyi also turned to look at him. Li Mosen pursed his lips and smiled faintly. He looked at Quan Jingyi, and the latter was also looking at him with a sizing gaze. Brother Mosen, what did you order? Li Jianyue turned around and ran to his side. She grabbed his arm and looked at the receipt. She shouted proudly, Haha, it's all my favorite food. Li Moyun bellowed angrily, "I'll never hang out with scammers again." Li Jianyue smiled indifferently and said, "Brother Mosen only ordered 3 servings. If you don't eat, then let Quan Jingyi eat." In front of a foodie, snatching food from others was like killing his parents. Li Moyun immediately looked at Quan Jingyi warily. Quan Jingyi put his hands in his trouser pockets and raised his eyebrows slightly. He said very cooperatively, "I have no objection." "No." Li Moyun immediately hugged Li Mosen's arm and shouted, "Who said I don't want to eat? Brother Mosen, I want to eat the biggest portion." Li Jianyue hugged her arms and snorted, "Quan Jingyi has already promised to have lunch with us. There's no more for you." Hearing Li Jianyue's words, Li Mosen frowned slightly unconsciously. He glanced coldly at Quan Jingyi, who had no intention of leaving. He put his arm around Li Jianyue's shoulder as if nothing had happened. "Let's go and find a seat first." Li Jianyue raised her head and looked at him. "Brother Mosen, I invited a classmate to eat with us. Can you order another meal?" Li Mosen said calmly, "I ordered a lot. It's enough to eat. If it's not enough, I'll order more." The 4 of them were led to the lounge area by the waiter. Li Jianyue excitedly pulled a stool over to Quan Jingyi. She asked curiously, "Can you bring me along for a part-time job?" Quan Jingyi asked. Looking at her clear and expectant eyes, Quan Jingyi felt as if his heart was being brushed by a feather. The words of rejection were stuck in his throat. At this time, Li Mosen suddenly interrupted, "You want to do a part-time job here?" Li Jianyue turned around and nodded excitedly. "I want to experience it too." It's very interesting to hear Quan Jingyi talk about it. "No." Li Mosen took a sip of water and said faintly, "Dad and Mom won't agree." Although Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi did not spoil their children, they would not allow Li Jianyue to experience social life so early. After all, they had to focus on learning now. There would be opportunities in the future for social practice. Li Jianyue pouted unhappily. Li Mosen poured a glass of water and handed it to her. He coaxed, "I'll bring you along during the holidays. Dad won't refuse." This kind of interest was temporary. After a period of time, it would naturally be forgotten. Chapter 2262. Romance Chinese Network. The latest chapter of the 99th divorce was updated as soon as possible. "I'm just experiencing it." Quan Jingyi sat lazily on the chair with a beautiful smile. "I'll take you there after dinner. There's a Pikachu set with the tour guide." "Wow, really? I like Pikachu very much." Li Jianrui immediately felt as if a switch had been turned on. She was overflowing with joy. She leaned on the table and leaned toward Quan Jingyi. "Can I wear the extra set?" Quan Jingyi nodded. "Sure." Li Jianrui was so happy that she was about to fly. She smiled brightly at Quan Jingyi and said, "That's great. You're so nice." Quan Jingyi raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled playfully. "You're saying that I'm nice now. What will you do when you know I'm nicer in the future?" Li Jianrui didn't notice the deeper meaning in Quan Jingyi's words and blurted out, "Then I'll be nicer to you too." "Really?" Li Jianrui nodded seriously. "Of course." As soon as she finished speaking, there was a harsh sound of a chair rubbing against each other. Li Mosen suddenly stood up and said with a bad expression, "Ursu, you have time now. Come with me to order some food for your classmate." Li Jianrui looked back at him in confusion. She also stood up and said, "Didn't you just say?" Before she could finish speaking, Li Mosen took her hand and left. Quan Jingyi sat up straight. When he was about to pick up a glass of water, he suddenly found that the little fatty next to him was looking at him inquisitively. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Quan Jingyi asked directly. Li Moyun looked at him and then at the 2 who had left. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. Why did he feel that something was wrong? Li Moyun scratched his forehead and glanced at Quan Jingyi next to him again. He suddenly felt enlightened and pursed his lips. It must be because of this boy. The way this boy looked at Ursu and the way he spoke just now showed that he was not a decent person. Ursu was so stupid that she didn't even realize that she was being teased by Quan Jingyi. Brother Mosen must have taken Ursu to a place where there was no one to educate her. With this thought in mind, Li Moyun held the cup of water and looked at Quan Jingyi meaningfully. He asked, "How is your relationship with my sister?" Quan Jingyi's attitude was calm. He said calmly, "Not bad." "Which aspect is fine?" Quan Jingyi looked over and asked, "Which aspect do you want it to be?" Other than Li Jianyue, Li Moyun and Li Mosen did not have a good time at the amusement park. Needless to say, Li Moyun was still brooding over the fact that he had been cheated. When he came out of the amusement park, he swore that he would never go out with Ursu and Li Mosen again. Li Mosen didn't show his unhappiness on the surface, but he became a little quiet when he got home and didn't eat much at dinner. At night, when Li Mosen was reading in his bedroom, there was a knock on the door. He turned back to look. Li Jianyue secretly raised her eyebrows and poked half of her head out. She sweetly called out, "Brother Mosen?" Then she pushed the door open and walked in with a bowl of supper. Li Mosen turned back to continue reading and asked, "What's the matter?" Li Jianyue put the supper on the table and pulled a stool to sit next to him. She held her face and said, "You didn't eat much at night. I specially asked Auntie Rong to make supper for you." Chapter 2263. As soon as she finished speaking, Li Mosen's face darkened. Li Jianyue was frightened by his sudden change of expression and shrank her neck. She stuck out her tongue and didn't realize what she said wrong. "What's wrong? He's really a good person, but his behavior is sometimes. Hey Brother Mosen, where are you going? Wait for me." Li Mosen clenched his fists and didn't want to hear her say anything about Quan Jingyi. He turned around and left with a gloomy face. Except for Li Jianyue, Li Moyun and Li Mosen didn't have a good time at the amusement park. Needless to say, Li Moyun was still brooding about being cheated. When he came out of the amusement park, he still swore that he would never go out with Ursu and Li Mosen again. Li Mosen didn't show his unhappiness on the surface. He just became a little quiet when he got home and didn't eat much at dinner. At night, when Li Mosen was reading in the bedroom, there was a knock on the door. He turned back to look. Li Jianyue secretly raised her eyebrows and poked half of her head out. She sweetly called out, "Brother Mosen?" Then she pushed the door open and walked in with a bowl of supper. Li Mosen turned back to continue reading and asked, "What's the matter?" Li Jianyue put the supper on the table and pulled a stool to sit next to him. She held her little face and said, "You didn't eat much at night. I specially asked Auntie Rong to make supper for you." Although she didn't know why Brother Mosen suddenly became so angry at the amusement park at noon, she also understood that Brother Mosen was angry because of her. He was so angry that he didn't eat dinner, so he specially asked Auntie Rong to make supper for him and personally brought it over. Li Mosen grunted without looking up and continued to read his book. He had no intention of paying any attention to her. Li Jianyue blinked and pulled the stool closer to him. "I asked Granny Rong to make your favorite wonton. If you don't eat it, I'm going to give it to Mo Yin to eat." "Okay." Li Mosen continued to flip through the book in his hand and said perfunctorily, "Well, I'm not hungry. You go and give it to Moyun." "You are condoning Moyun to commit crimes." Li Jianyue grabbed his arm and leaned over. "Brother Mosen, what book are you reading? So interesting." From the moment she came in, Li Mosen's attention was not on the book at all. When he heard her question, he turned to look at the contents of the book. Noticing that there were some unhealthy sentences in the book, he slammed the book shut. Ordinary extracurricular books. After saying that, he reached out and picked up the supper. Seeing that he was finally willing to eat supper, Li Jianyue tactfully stood up. She clasped her hands behind her back and looked around Li Mosen's room like a cadre visiting the countryside. Li Mosen's room was like him. It was low-key and simple. There was not much decoration, but the arrangement of things was just right. Li Jianyue leaned in front of his cabinet and looked at the figurines inside. She said, "Brother Mosen, don't be angry with me, okay? If you're angry and don't eat, I'll be sad too. When I go to the amusement park in the future, I won't only care about myself and forget about Brother Mosen." The words spoken in a sweet voice were tactful and pleasant. Her casual words were like the charming fragrance of wine, seeping into the heart and spleen. Li Mosen used the spoon to drink 2 mouthfuls of soup and couldn't eat any more. He wanted to read the latest chapter of 99th Divorce Claw Book House for free. Chapter 2264. Romance Chinese Network. The latest chapter of the 99th Divorce was updated as soon as possible. Li Mosen drank 2 mouthfuls of soup with the spoon and couldn't eat any more. The little girl's incessant coaxing really made him unable to be angry. Li Jianyue thought carefully, for a whole night, and only found this mistake that made Li Mosen unhappy. She shouldn't have been so focused on her own happiness that she forgot about Li Mosen. After saying this, she remembered that at noon, when she asked Li Mosen if he didn't like Quan Jingyi, Li Mosen's unfathomable look, so she continued, "Brother Mosen, Quan Jingyi is my friend now. He is actually a really good person. Before she could finish speaking, her arm was suddenly grabbed by someone behind her. The person behind her grabbed her arm and pressed her against the wall. His handsome and chiseled face suddenly appeared in front of her. His pitch-black eyes stared at her with suppressed emotions. Li Jianyue looked at Li Mosen with her eyes wide open. She forgot what she wanted to say and forgot to move. The girl's white and tender skin was as delicate as a porcelain doll, and her big black eyes looked at him without blinking. Her thick and long eyelashes trembled slightly. Li Mosen's heart suddenly softened. He lowered his eyes slightly, and his gaze fell on the pink and full little mouth, and his slightly raised Adam's apple unconsciously moved up and down. She was within reach in front of him. As long as he wanted, he could kiss her now and taste her sweetness. Li Mosen looked up at her and Li Jianyue burst out laughing. Her big dark eyes curved as she laughed. She looked at him with a smile and asked, "What's wrong, Brother Mosen?" Li Mosen looked at her motionlessly, and his lips were slightly pursed. He didn't know how many times he had imagined such a scene in his mind, but at this moment, he hesitated. Li Jianyue was so innocent and he couldn't bear to hurt her. After a long time, he pinched her cheek and said faintly, "He is not what you see on the surface. Don't get too close to him in the future." Li Jianyue opened her mouth and wanted to defend Quan Jingyi, but when she saw Li Mosen's expression, she silently swallowed the words in her throat. Li Mosen stood up and turned around. "I'm going to take a shower and go to bed. You can go back." Li Jianyue nodded obediently and said, "Brother Mosen, you must remember to finish your supper." "Yes." Back in her room, Li Jianyue took off her shoes and laid on the bed. She stared at the ceiling and exhaled deeply. She was thinking about how to explain to Li Mosen in the future so that he wouldn't hate Quan Jingyi. Just then the phone on the table vibrated. She turned over and took the phone. When she opened it, she saw that it was a message from Quan Jingyi. "Quan Jingyi, let's go together after school tomorrow." Li Jianyue blinked and replied, "I always go home with Brother Mosen." The message was sent, but the other side did not reply for a long time. Just as Li Jianyue was about to put it down, Quan Jingyi sent another message. "It's okay. See you tomorrow." Then he sent another photo. It was a photo of her wearing a Pikachu toy suit today. She held the Pikachu headgear with both hands, and the smile on her fair and lovely face was especially bright. Under Quan Jingyi's brush, her eyes were filled with warm and clear light, making the whole picture become beautiful. This painting was many times better than the ones that Quan Jingyi had sent her before. Chapter 2265. Romance Chinese Network. The latest chapter of the 99th divorce was updated as soon as possible. Li Jianrui was as happy as a child. She quickly replied, "You're amazing. You drew me so beautifully." "Quan Jingyi, it's normal." Li Jianyue laughed and said in a low voice, "Shameless." But when she saw the painting, well, it was beautiful. Li Jianrui smiled and typed a few words, "See you tomorrow." The next day, Li Jianrui rushed to school as usual. Quan Jingyi's seat was still empty. The bell rang and the teacher entered the class with his books. Li Jianrui secretly took out her phone and opened Quan Jingyi's WeChat. Just as she was about to send him a message to ask why he didn't come, a voice came from the door. At the door of the classroom, Quan Jingyi stood there with his school bag on his shoulder. The math teacher looked back at him and said indifferently, "Next time you come late, you will stand outside and listen to the class." Quan Jingyi ignored him and walked over with his school bag. On the podium, the math teacher had already started teaching. Li Jianrui took out her math book and opened it. Quan Jingyi, who was next to her, also sat down. Then a small wooden box was placed on top of her book. Li Jianrui looked back at him in surprise. Quan Jingyi said lazily, "Try it." Li Jianrui blinked. "You made it?" There was no answer, as if he had acquiesced. She glanced at the teacher on the podium and secretly opened the wooden box. When she saw the exquisite candy and cookies placed inside, Li Jianrui's eyes widened in surprise. The cookies were easier to bake, but she didn't know how he made these exquisite and delicious candy. Li Jianrui couldn't believe that Quan Jingyi made all these. What couldn't he do? Just as she was about to raise her head to speak, Quan Jingyi reached out and stuffed a candy into her mouth. Li Jianrui quickly lowered her head and secretly looked at the teacher like a thief. Quan Jingyi's low laughter came into her ears. "Is it delicious?" The sweetness of milk and fruit blended with each other in her mouth. Li Jianrui's cheeks were slightly red, and her heart was beating fast because of her guilty conscience. He was too bold. If the teacher found out, they would be dead. Li Jianrui covered her mouth with the book and whispered, "You're amazing. You even know how to make candy and cookies." Quan Jingyi lowered his eyes and said, "My mother taught me when I was very young." Li Jianrui had never heard him talk about his mother. She said sincerely, "Auntie is amazing." Quan Jingyi lowered his head, his expression unreadable. He murmured, Yes, she is very powerful. Li Jian suddenly remembered that his mother seemed to have passed away when he was very young. In the afternoon, as the bell rang, the teacher walked out of the classroom with the lesson plans. Quan Jingyi grabbed both of their school bags, kicked his chair away and walked out of the classroom as well. Li Jianyue was stunned for a moment and shouted, "Hey!" Such a scene attracted the attention of many people. Quan Jingyi walked lazily without looking back. "Let's go home." Quan Jingyi was tall and had long legs. He took 2 steps ahead of Li Jianyue. Li Jianyue was stared at by the surrounding students. Her face was a little hot. She trotted to catch up with him. Quan Jingyi probably thought that Li Jianyue was too slow, so he stopped in his tracks. Li Jianyue finally caught up with him. Just as she was about to take a breather, her hand was suddenly grabbed and she was pulled forward. Li Jianyue blinked and felt the temperature of the youth's palm. Her face was slightly hot. She wanted to pull her hand out, but looking at Quan Jingyi's undistracted look, she was afraid that her action would be too unnecessary. Chapter 2266. A large number of students rushed out of the school building to the gate. Not to mention how cool it was. Li Jianyue's face heated up. She thought about it and wanted to pull her hand back. However, Quan Jingyi held her tightly and said, "Keep up. You're walking too slowly." Li Jianyue thought that he was right. Compared to him, she was indeed walking a little slowly. So, she gave up struggling and asked, "Where are you taking me?" "We're going to have fun and eat delicious food." Hearing this, Li Jianyue's eyes instantly lit up. Delicious food? Or fun? Compared to the amusement park? Quan Jingyi laughed. "Have you only been to the amusement park? Is there anything else fun?" "There are many. Flash dance." Quan Jingyi pretended to be mysterious. Li Jianyue wanted to ask more. Suddenly, she saw a familiar figure standing beside the pillar at the school gate. Li Jianyue was stunned. She looked up and her eyes met Li Mosen's dark eyes. "Brother Mosen." Li Jianyue shouted naturally. When Quan Jingyi heard this, he raised his eyebrows and looked in the direction of her gaze. Li Mosen looked at the two of them with a complicated gaze. Then his gaze fell on Quan Jingyi's hand that was holding hers. Their figures were covered and exposed by the crowd, and they looked like they were walking on the street. A pair of blue eyes looked at their intertwined hands and narrowed. Li Jianyue followed Li Mosen's gaze. As if she had been electrocuted, she shook off Quan Jingyi's hand the next moment. It was as if she had done something guilty. However, she had not done anything guilty. She had even promised Quan Jingyi to play so she would not go home with him. She had already told Brother Mosen about this. This feeling of guilt was too strong. Li Jianyue was extremely annoyed. Just as she was hesitating about what to say, Li Mosen had already walked towards them. Li Jianyue looked up at Li Mosen. The little girl's face was regretful and conflicted. She said, Brother Mosen, why are you here?" "To pick you up." Li Mosen's eyes were gloomy. At this time his voice also sounded cold. "Go home." "But..." Before Li Jianyue could finish her sentence, Li Mosen grabbed her arm. Li Jianyue was pulled over, but before she could get close to Li Mosen, her other hand was held again. He turned around and saw Quan Jingyi with a faint smile on his face. "Senior, classmate Li has already agreed to go with me. She has also told you about the situation, right?" He did. However, he did not want to agree. Anyone could, but not Quan Jingyi. This male classmate was too aggressive. 16 or 17 years old were the easiest to be seduced by such a boy. How could he allow him to continue to commit crimes? Li Mosen retracted his gaze and said calmly, "I did, but our house isn't in the same direction as yours, so I won't trouble you." Li Jianyue quickly said, "Brother Mosen, I made an appointment with Quan Jingyi to go together." Li Mosen didn't even look at her. He interrupted her with a calm expression and reached out to Quan Jingyi. "Classmate, your school bag." Quan Jingyi looked down at the school bag in his hand and raised his eyebrows. He raised his hand and casually threw the school bag over. He said teasingly, "You will graduate next year. Can you still look at her for the rest of your life?" The careless words were like a thorn, suddenly stabbing into the soft spot that Mosen had never dared to touch. He couldn't. Chapter 2267. Li Mosen took back her school bag and turned around. His face was cold. "You don't have to worry about that." As he said that, he turned around and pulled Li Jianyue. Li Jianyue was a little reluctant. After all, she had already made an appointment with Quan Jingyi. But seeing that Li Mosen was obviously very unhappy, she could only swallow her grievances. For the next 2 weeks, Li Mosen was very strict with her. Time passed quickly and soon it was the midterm exam. This time, the teacher in charge of the class attached great importance to the exam. It was said that he had formed a bet with the teacher, so he had been very strict with the average score of the class. Even Quan Jingyi, after communicating with the homeroom teacher twice, began to listen attentively in class, which was rare. After the exam, the class monitor suggested that the whole class go out for a gathering. The students were very enthusiastic. Li Jianyue rarely participated in group activities. After reporting to her parents and brother, she joined the after-exam gathering. A group of young people, in addition to the time, wanted to eat and drink to relax, so the class committee set the location at the KTV. The school uniform of No. 1 middle school was very eye-catching, revealing the atmosphere of youth everywhere. After getting on the bus that the class committee booked, Li Jianyue realized that Quan Jingyi was going with them. Quan Jingyi got into the car lazily. After seeing Li Jianyue, his slightly listless eyes quickly locked onto her. Then he walked forward and gently tapped the shoulder of the girl beside Li Jianyue. "Can we change seats?" he asked. The girl was Li Jianyue's new deskmate. When she saw Quan Jingyi's expression, she looked at them ambiguously and said, "Sure, but it's not easy to give up this seat. Do you want to bribe me with something?" Quan Jingyi asked. When Li Jianyue heard this, she felt that she was a little too much. How could a person like Quan Jingyi use something to bribe someone? But unexpectedly, Quan Jingyi did not immediately refuse. Instead, he lowered his head and rummaged through the bag in his hand. Then he took out a lollipop and handed it to her. "Can I?" The girl had only been teasing him. Now that she had received the lollipop, she was even more certain of her guess. She immediately stood up and said, come on. You can sit here." Our classmate Quan Jingyi actually bribed me just to sit with Li Jianyue." The last sentence was shouted out. The surrounding students were already fooling around. When they heard this, some of the nosy boys whistled. "Wow, what a good match. Are they dating? Wow, Li Jianyue is blushing." With the shouts from the surroundings, Quan Jingyi's originally lazy and indifferent attitude gradually disappeared. He turned to look at Li Jianyue and found that her face was red. When Li Jianyue met his gaze, she became even more annoyed and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Be careful that I don't get angry." Li Jianyue didn't look intimidating when she was angry. Instead, she looked more like a spoiled child. The boys didn't take it seriously and started to jeer again. Li Jianyue blushed and shouted, "I'm going to ignore you guys. If you ignore us, you'll ignore Quan Jingyi? Of course Quan Jingyi is so handsome. You're not handsome. That hurts." Li Jianyue had already turned her head to look out the window. Quan Jingyi's heart was rippling. Chapter 2268. Oh, it was a little sweet. Li Jianyue was too cute. Quan Jingyi reached out and patted her gently. Li Jianyue turned her head and shouted fiercely, "What?" Quan Jingyi laughed. Like a kitten. Li Jianyue's face heated up when he laughed like that. She shouted, "Hurry up and explain. We're not like what they said. Hurry up and say it." Quan Jingyi looked at her red face and raised his eyebrows. "Why is your face so red? It's fine if they say it. Anyway, we just need to know it ourselves." "But we're obviously not," Li Jianyue said angrily. "Hurry up." "All right," Quan Jingyi said with a helpless look on his face. "You heard it all, but we're still not." "Wow. Still not? Does that mean that we will be in the future?" "Ha, I know. So it's the future, Mrs. Quan." Li Jianyue was furious. She turned around and hit him. "What kind of explanation is that?" "That's the explanation." Quan Jingyi looked at her. "Don't you know what it means?" Li Jianyue's heart seemed to skip a beat. She looked at him with her round eyes wide open. Quan Jingyi moved closer and whispered, "You know." Li Jianyue's cheeks turned red. She reached out and pushed him away. She shouted, "I don't know." Quan Jingyi was pushed back a few steps. He said. There seemed to be a hint of a smile on his lips, but at the same time he didn't. "If you don't know, then don't know. Anyway, you'll find out eventually." Li Jianyue's heart beat faster. Behind her was a large group of students jeering. Li Jianyue looked out of the car window, but she didn't see anything. Her mind was buzzing. Quan Jingyi, was he confessing to her? But it didn't seem like it. He didn't say that he liked her. But there seemed to be. The way he looked at her just now, it seemed like he really liked her. Li Jianyue kept looking out of the window. After a long time, Quan Jingyi said, "Does your brother know that you came out to play?" Li Jianyue was stunned for a moment. Then she nodded. "Yes." The students on the bus had already begun to play their own games. A few students who were more focused on their studies were exchanging their answers for the midterm exam. Most of the students were laughing with each other. After making sure that no one was making fun of her and Quan Jingyi, the tension in her heart eased a little. Quan Jingyi sensed her nervousness and understood. He quietly leaned closer and whispered, "Does your brother know that I'm here too?" Li Jianyue nodded her head again. However, she subconsciously shook her head again and said, "I don't know either. But I'm talking about a class activity. You should know that you're here too. After all, you're also in our class." Quan Jingyi pursed his lips. "Not necessarily." Li Jianyue averted her eyes and thought for a moment before saying, "But Brother Mosun probably won't be angry anymore, right?" Half a month had passed. In the past half a month, in order not to make Li Mosun think too much and be angry, she took the initiative to distance herself from Quan Jingyi. Quan Jingyi seemed to know what was going on. During this time, he had been tactfully staying away from her. It was the first time that such a situation had happened. Quan Jingyi shook his head slightly. "He's too strict with you. Don't you have no freedom at all?" Chapter 2269. When Li Jianyue heard this, she recalled Li Mosun's tough attitude 2 weeks ago. She knew that her parents and brothers loved her dearly since she was young. Because they loved her dearly, they were afraid that she would be hurt, so there were some restrictions. Li Mosun didn't believe that Quan Jingyi was a good person, so he forbade her from getting along with him freely. Li Jianyue understood all these things. "No, Brother Mosun loves me very much. Maybe he misunderstood something. He doesn't allow me to fall in love at such a young age." Li Jianyue stuck out her tongue. "My father and mother also said that I can't fall in love at such a young age. So, my brother is just concerned about me. It's not just you. It's the same for other boys." The corners of Quan Jingyi's lips curled up slightly. He tilted his head and whispered into Li Jianyue's ear, "Does it mean that as long as I treat you well, I can intervene in your affairs?" His warm breath caressed her ear. Li Jianyue felt that it was a little close to her. She subconsciously shrank back and said, "No." Quan Jingyi looked at her seriously and said in a clear voice, "Then what if I want to?" Li Jianyue was stunned. She finally realized the distance between them at this time. As soon as this thought popped up in her mind, Li Jianyue's cheeks were burning hot. She felt as if she was being roasted on a fire. Her fair face was flushed and her palms were sweaty. What the hell was he trying to do? Why did he say such strange things to her? Was he really confessing to her? But he didn't even say that he liked her. Was this a confession? Just when Li Jianyue was so nervous that she didn't know how to answer him, Quan Jingyi sat up straight. He seemed very helpless. He crossed his arms over his chest and closed his eyes. He said lazily, "Call me when we arrive." When Li Jianyue saw him turn around, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. Looking out of the car window, Li Jianyue's face was still warm and her mind was in a mess. Due to the large number of people, when they arrived at the KTV, the class committee suggested that they be divided into 2 groups and asked for 2 large private rooms. The class committee originally planned to separate the boys and girls, but they were met with protests from the boys. In the end, the class committee could only divide the male and female equally. After getting out of the car, Quan Jingyi followed Li Jianyue the entire time. At first, Li Jianyue didn't think much of it. However, when she felt the ambiguous gazes of the people around her, she felt her face burning. In such an occasion, Li Jianyue was originally a very active person, but now she felt that she couldn't let go. Especially with Quan Jingyi sitting next to her, Li Jianyue felt like she was sitting on pins and needles. However, there were so many people that almost everyone was squeezing together. She couldn't move even if she wanted to. There were more than a dozen people in a private room. It was very lively when they made a ruckus. Quan Jingyi had been chatting with someone on his phone ever since he entered the private room. Not long after, Quan Jingyi put his phone back into his pocket and said to her naturally, "I'm going out for a while. Call me if anything happens." Li Jianyue didn't think there was anything wrong with it, so she answered casually. However, a boy next to her started to make a fuss. "Wow, you haven't even gotten together yet, but you already have to report your entry and exit. What a sour smell of love." Li Jianyue was stunned. By the time she reacted, the entire room was in an uproar. Her face burned even hotter. She said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense. Shut up all of you." Quan Jingyi glanced at them. "Girls are thin-skinned. All of you be careful." Okay, Brother Quan." Chapter 2270. We won't tease Aunt Quan anymore, haha. Shut up, we're just classmates, Li Jianhua shouted. However, it was clear that it did not have much of a deterrent effect. Quan Jingyi looked at her shy look and didn't stay any longer. He stood up and walked out. After Quan Jingyi left, Li Jianhua felt much more relaxed. After a while, a female classmate next to her handed her a microphone and encouraged her to sing with another female classmate. The song was ordered by another female classmate. It was a common old song, Little Jumping Frog. The song was very cute and cheerful. Li Jianhua did not mince her words. She held the microphone and walked up to the stage. The female classmate's microphone was snatched away by Yang Zihao. Everyone knew about Yang Zihao's fight with Quan Jingyi. Someone joked, "Yang Zihao, you're taking advantage of the situation. Quan Jingyi just left for a while and you dare to do this? Aren't you afraid that Quan Jingyi will beat you up when he comes back?" Yang Zihao was beaten up so badly by Quan Jingyi. Yang Zihao, Li Jianhua is the future Mrs. Quan. If Quan Jingyi hits you later, we won't stop him. Li Jianhua's cheeks turned red. She wished she could find a mouse hole to hide in. "Don't talk nonsense," she said angrily with a red face. "If you continue like this, I'll really get angry." On the other hand, Yang Zihao was enraged after being embarrassed. He looked at Li Jianhua nervously and said to the crowd, "That's right. Don't talk nonsense." When did Li Jianhua say that she wanted to date him? He would remember the humiliation that Quan Jingyi gave him for the rest of his life. Now that Quan Jingyi was not here, he felt more confident after saying this. He straightened his chest and said, "Quan Jingyi is a bully. What else can he do besides violence? If he didn't know how to hit people, how could someone as innocent as Li Jianhua fall for a bad youth like him who doesn't study hard?" Although she didn't like it when her classmates teased her and Quan Jingyi, she was still very angry when she heard Yang Zihao insult Quan Jingyi. Last time he was the one who made the first move. In the end it was Quan Jingyi who was scolded. Besides, how was Quan Jingyi a delinquent? He was obviously very good at drawing and worked very hard. Before the exam this time he also studied very seriously. Li Jianhua turned around angrily and was about to defend Quan Jingyi when the door of the private room was suddenly pushed open. "Looks like I, the delinquent youth, didn't beat you, the top student dog, until you learned to speak human language." At the door of the private room, Quan Jingyi had his hands in his trouser pockets. He leaned against the door frame and looked at the shocked Yang Zihao with a faint smile. Beside him stood a tall and beautiful girl. When Yang Zihao saw Quan Jingyi, he couldn't help but shiver. He immediately became terrified. The boys in the class also jeered, "Yang Zihao, hurry up and return the microphone to Zhao Jing. Come down. If you don't come down now, Quan Jingyi will beat you up." Yang Zihao's face turned red with anger, but when he saw Quan Jingyi's half-smile, he didn't say anything. He returned the microphone to the female student next to him. Zhao Jing took Yang Zihao's microphone and walked up to Li Jianhua. "Li Jianhua, I've picked another song. Let's sing it again." "Ignore him." Li Jianhua nodded and looked back at the door. Quan Jingyi smiled and raised his eyebrows at her. He said something to the girl next to him and the two of them walked in together. But who was the girl next to him? Li Jianhua couldn't help but look at her. She looked a little familiar. Chapter 2271. The girl obviously noticed Li Jianhua's gaze and waved at her with a youthful smile on her face. The more Li Jianhua looked at her, the more familiar she felt, so she also waved at her. The cheerful music sounded, and Zhao Jing held Li Jianhua's hand and swayed her body. Li Jianhua was a little restrained because Quan Jingyi was back, but she was soon distracted by the music. Zhao Jing's voice was neutral, and she sang the adult male part. Li Jianhua's voice was sweet, and she sang the child's voice. The dream planted in the happy pond becomes the ocean. The bulging eyes and the big mouth sing equally loudly, "Lend me a pair of small wings and I can fly to the sun. I believe a miracle is on me, la." Under the gorgeous light, Li Jianhua and Zhao Jing let go of each other. The two girls had hardly spoken before, but at this moment they cooperated very well. Li Jianhua held the microphone in one hand and swung it with the other. She turned around cutely with the rhythm and shook her butt happily. In the middle of the song, she and Zhao Jing imitated the little frog and croaked at the same time. Their nose was slightly wrinkled and their big eyes were moving. Their cute expression instantly made everyone present feel cute. "Ha ha 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 ha. So cute. What kind of fairy combination is this? Li Jianhua is so cute. A girl am about to fall in love with her." Quan Jingyi was drinking his drink. He looked at the cheerful and cute girl and curled his lips. For a moment he was in a trance. Every frown, every smile, every move was like a picture of the scene. She was really cute. Qin Shizao looked at Li Jianyue and then at him. She asked jokingly, "Jingyi, is she the interesting girl you mentioned?" Quan Jingyi looked at Li Jianyue without moving his eyes. Qin Shizao crossed her arms in front of her chest. Although there was a smile on her face, there was a flash of disdain in her eyes when she looked at Li Jianyue. She was so childish. It was obvious that she was a flower in a greenhouse. There were a lot of girls like her outside. How was she interesting? However, she seemed to be the sister of Senior Mosen. Thinking of the black-haired and blue-eyed boy, Qin Shizao's eyes became more calculating. At the end of the song, the atmosphere in the private room was high. The students were all shouting for Li Jianyue and Zhao Jing to play another song. Li Jianyue sang happily. Usually when she went out to play with her family, it was always her mother and Mo Yun singing, while the others played by themselves. Even when she was playing with Xiao Xiao and Pan Pan, there were only a few of them cheering for each other. This was the first time that she was singing and performing in front of her classmates, and there were so many people praising her. When Li Jianyue saw her classmates' praises, she couldn't hide her excitement. However, she still shook her head and said, "This is AL's song. All you do it." Al was a male classmate. When he took the microphone from Li Jianyue's hand with a smile, he thanked her. But then he suddenly pushed her with a bad intention. Li Jianyue was shocked. Just when she thought that she was going to fall, a pair of big hands caught her firmly. Looking back, it was Quan Jingyi. Li Jianyue breathed a sigh of relief. When she glared at Al, he had already pretended to know nothing and turned around to sing. Quan Jingyi chuckled. "Look at how angry you are." His voice was very low with a hint of doting. Zhao Jing exclaimed, "How doting and sweet. It's really the tone of a boyfriend talking to his girlfriend. You guys should be together soon." Li Jianyue suddenly thought of Li Mosen. Brother Mosen often talked to her like this. Was this doting? Was it sweet? Download address. Chapter 2272. With Al's funny singing, the room became lively again. Li Jianyue followed Quan Jingyi and sat down on the sofa. Qin Shizao, who was sitting at the side, took the initiative to reach out to Li Jianyue. "Hi, hello. I'm Jingyi's friend. My name is Qin Shizao." As she got closer, the more Li Jianyue looked at Qin Shizao, the more familiar she felt. She reached out and shook hands with Qin Shizao. She also introduced herself politely. "Hello, my name is Li Jianyue." Qin Shizao smiled and asked bluntly, "May I ask, why have you been looking at me since I came in?" Being asked so directly by Qin Shizao, Li Jianyue was a little embarrassed, which made her seem very rude. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to look at you. I just thought you looked a little familiar." "Really?" Qin Shizao smiled in surprise. "Me too. When I first came in, I felt that you looked very familiar. Is this fate?" "All right." Quan Jingyi took a can of drink and handed it to Li Jianyue. He smiled and said, "Who are you not familiar with?" Qin Shizao pretended to be angry and hit him. She stood up and pulled him, saying, "Go to hell. Aren't you embarrassed to be sandwiched between two girls? Make way, I want to sit with Jianyue." The two of them seemed to have a very good relationship. Quan Jingyi was not angry at Qin Shizao's rudeness. Instead, he smiled and gave way to the two of them. Qin Shizao also reached out and took a can of drink. She opened it and clinked glasses with Li Jianyue. She winked and whispered into her ear, "Actually, I've heard Jingyi talk about you a long time ago. I even secretly saw your portrait on his phone. Just now, I even saw your portrait on his phone's screensaver." In that case, it was not surprising that Qin Shizao said that she looked familiar when she saw her. However, Li Jianyue couldn't figure out why she found Qin Shizao familiar. He felt like he had really seen her somewhere before. But when she heard Qin Shizao's last sentence clearly, her fair cheeks instantly flushed red. She couldn't help but sneak a glance at Quan Jingyi. Quan Jingyi was sipping his drink while watching Al's performance. Under the light, his handsome side profile was straight and handsome. Li Jianyue's face heated up. She pinched herself in embarrassment. "Li Jianyue, what are you thinking? Jianyue, are you blushing?" Qin Shizao smiled ambiguously. Li Jianyue immediately retorted, "I didn't." "Ah, you're getting more and more popular." "Of course not." Li Jianyue's palms were burning from her teasing. When Quan Jingyi heard the laughter, he turned around and looked over. Their eyes met inadvertently, and Li Jianyue quickly pretended to be calm and avoided it. Quan Jingyi raised his eyebrows slightly. "What's wrong?" Qin Shizao coughed lightly and looked at Li Jianyue ambiguously. She said, "It's none of your business. I'm whispering to Jianyue." It was getting late and the gathering was coming to an end. Li Jianyue and Quan Jingyi were originally going to take a bus home with their classmates, but because Qin Shizao's house was nearby, Qin Shizao invited them to her house to play. After Li Jianyue and Quan Jingyi told the class committee, they went to Qin Shizao's house together. Qin Shizao's house was in a high-end neighborhood nearby, and the decoration of her house was also very luxurious. It could be seen that Qin Shizao's family should be well off. At this time, Qin Shizao's parents had not returned yet, and there were only servants at home. Download address, phone reading. Chapter 2273. The Ambiguity of Youth, 7. Qin Shizao ordered the servants to send the snacks to her room, and then brought the two of them back to her room. Quan Jingyi seemed to have come to Qin Shizao's house a lot. He didn't seem to be restrained at Qin Shizao's house. After entering Qin Shizao's room, Quan Jingyi took out the game controller and gave it to Li Jianyue. He said, "I'll teach you how to play games." When Li Jianyue saw this, she was reminded of the game that her brother usually played with Chu. These two perverts often played, but the difficulty of the games they played were too high. She tried it once and was traumatized. Seeing Quan Jingyi like this, he said honestly, "I don't know how to play this game. That's why I said I wanted to teach you." Quan Jingyi sat down beside her naturally. "Try it." "Ah." Li Jianyue held the controller and watched him turn it on. "Okay." The game soon began. Li Jianyue realized that this game was not as difficult as the two perverts at home, but it was not easy for her either. Li Jianyue was a little depressed when she died twice very quickly. Quan Jingyi said, "It doesn't matter. It's always like this at the beginning." Qin Shizao teased, Hey, you two have to take care of me, a single dog, okay? I want to play too." Quan Jingyi rejected her heartlessly. "Wait a moment. Let's play a few rounds first." After Qin Shizao's protest failed, she had no choice but to sit beside Li Jianyue with the snacks and drinks brought by the servants to guide her. "Jianyue, beat him up. He's going to die. Beat him up. Quick." "Ah." Li Jianyue was nervous and excited. Her fair and tender face was flushed with excitement. Quan Jingyi glanced sideways at her. His movements were still smooth. Looking at her serious expression, he deliberately tilted the controller. "Yeah." Li Jianyue cheered and high-fived Qin Shizao excitedly. "Haha, Jingyi, you little bastard, you deserve this. If I knew that Jianyue could cure you, I would have been friends with Jianyue a long time ago." Qin Shizao snorted with a smile and said, "Who asked you to bully me in the game?" Li Jianyue didn't expect to win one day. She exclaimed excitedly, "Again! Let me do it. Let's play 3-player mode." Looking at the two excited girls, Quan Jingyi held the controller and started the game. He fought the two girls alone. Li Jianyue and Qin Shizao cooperated with each other to fight Quan Jingyi. Every time Quan Jingyi counterattacked, the two girls would scream nervously. Quan Jingyi couldn't help but chuckle. The three of them were addicted to the game and played a few rounds in a row. It wasn't until Li Jianyue's phone rang that they stopped. Li Jianyue took out her phone. When she saw that it was a call from Li Mosen, she became inexplicably nervous. However, she didn't dare to make it too obvious, for fear that Quan Jingyi would misunderstand and get angry. She stood up and walked towards the balcony as she answered the phone. Chapter 2274. The Romance of Youth, 8. Li Mosen's tone was too calm, and Li Jianyue's uneasy heart was instantly relieved. She told Li Mosen the address of Qin Shizao's house. 20 minutes later, the servant of Qin Shizao's house knocked on the door and said that a boy had come to pick up his sister. Li Jianyue put down the game controller and stood up to say goodbye to the two. "My brother is here to pick me up. I'll go home first." "Your brother?" Qin Shizao was slightly startled. Her eyes were filled with anticipation as she asked, "Could it be the senior Li from the 3rd year of high school?" Li Jianyue nodded innocently and asked in surprise, "Shizao also knows Brother Mosen?" Qin Shizao was stunned and shook her head with a smile. "I don't know him. Senior Li is very famous in school. I just realized that your surname is also Li, so I asked casually. I didn't expect you two to really be brother and sister." Qin Shizao put down the controller and stood up. She said enthusiastically, "Let's go, Jianyue. I'll send you off." After saying that, Qin Shizao turned around and looked at Quan Jingyi, who was sitting on the ground with one leg curled up lazily with his hands behind his back. She said, "Hey Jingyi, Jianyue is going home. Aren't you going down with me to send her off?" Quan Jingyi turned around and looked up at her. His gaze then fell on Li Jianyue. He stared at Li Jianyue and curled his lips slightly. He said meaningfully, "I'll be able to see her again tomorrow. Why should I cause trouble for her today?" Turning around, Quan Jingyi raised an arm and waved. "Be careful on the way." Qin Shizhao didn't know about the grudge between Quan Jingyi and Li Mosen, so she didn't understand what he meant at the moment. He's saying something inexplicable again. "Jianyue, let's go. I won't talk to this little bastard anymore." Qin Shizhao didn't understand, but Li Jianyue did. But she was also very troubled. All of this was just a misunderstanding. Quan Jingyi was not wrong and Brother Mosen was not wrong. She couldn't be biased towards either side. When they went downstairs, Qin Shizhao kept holding Li Jianyue's hand and warmly invited her to come often in the future. She liked her very much. The two of them chatted and laughed as they walked down the stairs. In the living room, Li Mosen sat on the sofa and drank the tea that the servant had brought over. His sitting posture was not like that of most high school students, who were hunched over and crossed their legs. Instead, his back was straight, and the temperament he exuded was that of a noble who had walked out of a classical painting. Just looking at his back made one's heart beat wildly, just like his innate blue eyes. Qin Shizhao's hand was still holding Li Jianyue's. She was smiling, but her eyes were already attracted by the figure, and even her breathing became a little tight. "Brother Mosen." Li Jianyue let go of Qin Shizhao's hand and ran over quickly. She threw herself on Li Mosen's back across the sofa. He was probably afraid that the tea in his hand would burn her, so he immediately stretched out his arm and placed the cup on the coffee table. He turned his head slightly and revealed a faint smile that he rarely revealed. "Be careful." Looking at the two figures, Qin Shizhao's eyes were filled with envy. If Li Mosen could also smile at her like this, how great would it be? Li Mosen stood up and walked to Li Jianyue's side. He raised his hand to help her tidy her collar. Looking at Li Jianyue's flushed face and fine sweat, he asked, "Why is there so much sweat on your forehead?" Li Jianyue said happily, "I'm excited playing games with Shizhao and the others." After saying that, she took Li Mosen's hand and said to Qin Shizhao, "Brother Mosen, this is my new friend, Qin Shizhao." Hearing Li Jianyue's words, Li Mosen looked at Qin Shizhao indifferently, as if he had just discovered her existence. End of this chapter. Chapter 2275. Qin Shizhao was really hurt by Li Mosen's gaze. But at the same time she was a little surprised by the way Li Mosen looked at Li Jianyue. The way he looked at Li Jianyue, it was as if as long as Li Jianyue was there was no one else in his eyes. Qin Shizhao suppressed the sadness in her heart, but a simple and appropriate smile appeared on her face. She walked forward and reached out her hand. "Hello, Senior Li." Li Mosen nodded with a faint expression and touched her fingertips politely as a greeting. Seeing that Li Mosen turned around and was about to take Li Jianyue away, Qin Shizhao's heart tightened. She said anxiously, "Senior Li, it's already dark. My auntie is also preparing dinner. Why don't you stay with Jianyue for dinner before leaving?" Facing the person she liked who was so close to her, the desire in her heart for him could no longer be satisfied just like that. Even if Li Mosen's eyes didn't stay on her for long, Qin Shizhao still wanted to keep him and talk to him more. Li Mosen turned around again. This time, his eyes were no longer as indifferent as before, but he was just a little more polite. "No, my parents are waiting for us to go home for dinner." After saying that, Li Mosen turned around and said to Li Jianyue, "Let's go home." Li Jianyue was about to nod when Qin Shizhao said, "Then I'll ask my driver to send you guys. It's dark now, it's not easy to take a taxi from my house." It was fine for new friends to be enthusiastic, but excessive flattery was a little annoying. Li Mosen turned around and stared at Qin Shizhao seriously. He said coldly, "No need, there's a driver." After saying that, he put his arm around Li Jianyue's shoulder and walked towards the door. Li Jianyue turned around and waved at Qin Shizhao. "Shizhao, goodbye. I'll invite you to my house next time." Qin Shizhao smiled and nodded. "Okay." Because this was the first time Li Jianyue had returned late, Su Qinxi was also worried about her daughter, so she asked the driver to bring Li Mosen along. On the way back, Li Mosen suddenly asked, "How did you meet?" Li Jianyue's heart tightened. She raised her head and asked, "Brother Mosen, are you talking about Shizhao?" Li Mosen's blue eyes took in the subtle changes in her expression, and he nodded calmly. Li Jianyue twisted her hands together and bit her lips. She was struggling in the depths of her heart. She wasn't sure if Brother Mosen would be angry when she mentioned Quan Jingyi, but she wouldn't lie to Li Mosen. She thought for a moment and said, Shizao is Quan Jingyi's friend. Quan Jingyi introduced us to each other at the class gathering. Li Mosen said lightly, so, Quan Jingyi was also at Qin Shizao's house just now? Li Jianyue was extremely nervous. It was as if he had done something wrong and was discovered. He felt nervous and guilty at the same time. She was a little afraid that Brother Mosen would be angry. Brother Mosen had always been a very gentle person, but whenever he met Quan Jingyi, his temper would become very bad. But even so, Li Jianyue didn't want to lie to him and said, yes, we played games with Shizao. Li Mosen pursed his lips. Although his expression was the same as before, Li Jianyue, who had lived with him since he was young, immediately noticed his displeasure. Just like at Qin Shizao's house. Chapter 2276. Once Li Mosen changed from being polite to being extremely indifferent to a stranger, it proved that he didn't like the other party or that the other party had done something that made him unhappy. Li Jianyue immediately pulled his arm and acted coquettishly like she did to her brother when she was young. Brother Mosen, actually Shizao is the same as Quan Jingyi. They are both very good people. They are all very good to me. They don't want to lead me astray or anything. Afraid that Li Mosen wouldn't believe her, Li Jianyue tried her best to help the two of them regain their good impression. Quan Jingyi said that Shizao is actually a straight-A student. Just like Brother Mosen, she is very good at studying. Looking at her eager look, Li Mosen pursed his lips and nodded faintly. He didn't continue asking. The next day Quan Jingyi didn't come to school for a whole day. Just when Li Jianyue was about to send him a message to ask, she received a friend request from Qin Shizao. Li Jianyue had a good impression of Qin Shizao and had already treated her as her friend yesterday. After agreeing with her friend's expression, Qin Shizao took the initiative to send her a message. After the two chatted for a while, Qin Shizao took the initiative to ask, did Jingyi not go to school? Li Jianyue, yes, does Shizao know why he didn't come to school? Qin Shizao, not long after you left yesterday his father called him to urge him to go back. I contacted him at night, but he didn't pay attention to me. He must have had a conflict with his father and stepmother again. Then Qin Shizao sent another message, Jianyue, don't worry about him. This little bastard often dares to do such things. It won't be long. Looking at the message sent by Qin Shizao, Li Jianyue's mind recalled the time when Quan Jingyi's father came to school to deal with Quan Jingyi's matter. Quan Jingqing's indiscriminate attitude at the beginning was really unbearable. Even after understanding the truth later, the harm to Quan Jingyi at that time was not something that could be healed easily. Li Jianyue propped her chin up and stared out of the window muttering, Quan Jingyi couldn't have been beaten by his father again, right? Because tomorrow was the weekend, Li Xiqing took his wife and children out for dinner in the evening. After dinner he played outside for a long time before returning home. On the car home, Li Jianyue received Qin Shizao's WeChat message. Qin Shizao, Jianyue, I just saw you and Senior Li. Did your family come out for dinner together? Li Jianyue subconsciously looked out of the car window, but she didn't see Qin Shizao. She lowered her head and quickly typed a reply. Yes, are you eating here with your family? Qin Shizao, no, I'm with Jingyi the little bastard. As soon as Qin Shizao's WeChat message was sent, her phone rang again. Quan Jingyi, do you have any plans for tomorrow? She hadn't heard from him for a whole day. Li Jianyue wanted to ask him the reason. However, when she thought that this might involve Quan Jingyi's family matters, she gave up. Li Jianyue, no, why? Quan Jingyi, I'm going out to play to make up for what happened last time. Li Jianyue, okay. Last time, Quan Jingyi said he would take her to eat delicious food and play fun, but because of Brother Mosen they didn't go in the end. Oh no. Li Jianyue immediately covered her mouth and looked back at Li Mosen, who was sitting next to her. How could she answer Quan Jingyi so quickly? If Brother Mosen knew that she was going out with Quan Jingyi again, he would definitely be angry again. At this moment, another notification came from WeChat. Chapter 2277. Li Jianyue looked down. It was Qin Shizao who had pulled her and Quan Jingyi into a temporary WeChat group. There were only the three of them. Qin Shizao, don't chat secretly behind my back. Qin Shizao, chat in the group. Then Qin Shizao tagged Li Jianyue again and said, Jianyue, Jingyi said that he wants to treat us to a meal. Let's not stand on ceremony with him tomorrow, okay? The little bastard didn't come to class today and earned some pocket money. Looking at Qin Shizao's message, Li Jianyue frowned in embarrassment. What should she do? She really wanted to go. After the two villains in her heart fought for a long time, Li Jianyue looked at Li Mosen beside her and decided to reject Quan Jingyi and Qin Shizao. Li Jianyue? Quan Jingyi Shizao, I'm sorry, I won't go out to play tomorrow. After the message was sent, Qin Shizao sent a few questioning emojis. Li Jianyue secretly sighed and put the phone back into her pocket. When she got home, Li Jianyue sat on the sofa in the living room. She took out her phone again and suddenly realized that there were many messages in the WeChat group. Most of it was said by Qin Shizao, and Quan Jingyi only said a few words. The last sentence that Quan Jingyi said was to Li Jianyue, "Bring him out with you." The following were all Qin Shizao's words. Qin Shizao said, "That's right, Jianyue. Since Senior Li has misunderstood Jingyi, you can ask him to come out with you tomorrow. Don't tell him that Jingyi is also here. Let them have a good chat when they meet." Then, Qin Shizao sent another voice message and said, "I heard that Senior Li is not only good at studying and playing basketball, but he is also very polite. Jianyue, bring Senior Li with you tomorrow. Any misunderstandings can be solved when you meet him. You and Jingyi are classmates and you will be in the same class for 2 years. Are you going to not talk to Jingyi for the rest of your life just to appease Senior Li?" After listening to Qin Shizao's voice, Li Mosen walked in with Su Qianxi and the others. Her father, Li Xiqing, was whispering something to Li Mosen. Li Mosen nodded and glanced at Li Jianyue. Li Jianyue looked at him thoughtfully. She held her phone in her hand. He didn't know what she was thinking about. When Li Mosen finished speaking with Li Xiqing and looked up again, Li Jianyue had already gone upstairs. Back in the room, Li Mosen took off his shirt and was about to take a shower in the bathroom when someone knocked on the bedroom door. Li Jianyue's sweet voice came from outside the door. "Brother Mosen, I'm coming in." Hearing Li Jianyue's voice, Li Mosen subconsciously pulled on his clothes, but before he could put them on, the bedroom door had been twisted open. Li Jianyue walked in with a smile on her face. "Brother Mosen, Li Jianyue blinked her eyes as she looked at the body in front of her. He had a flat stomach and a well-defined chest. She walked towards him and said, "Wow, muscles. Brother Mosen, when did you train? You look so handsome." Li Mosen, who was about to put on his clothes, paused for a moment. Seeing her staring at him, he simply threw the clothes aside and asked, "Do you like it? You can touch it." Li Jianyue suddenly thought of the domineering CEO that her desk mate had been watching. When the male lead was facing the female lead naked, he would always ask, "Are you satisfied with what you see?" Thinking of this, Li Jianyue suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Chapter 2278. It seemed to be a little inappropriate. But Li Jianyue really wanted to touch it. It was very comfortable to look at. Seeing that she didn't move, Li Mosen changed the topic at the right time and asked, "What's wrong?" Li Jianyue smiled and said, "It's nothing. I just wanted to ask if you are free tomorrow. I want to invite you out." Hearing her words, Li Mosen's eyes flashed with surprise. "Invitation?" Li Jianyue nodded. "Yes. Are you free?" Li Mosen replied calmly, "When have I not been free since you asked me out?" Li Jianyue smiled slyly and stretched out a finger. "Then it's a deal. You can't go back on your word tomorrow." Li Mosen lowered his head slightly and chuckled. "Well, I won't go back on my word." Seeing his serious look, Li Jianyue turned and returned to her room. She had taken the first step on the road to success. When he saw them tomorrow, he would probably find that Quan Jingyi was not as bad as he thought. Maybe he wouldn't hate her being friends with Quan Jingyi so much in the future. The next day, after breakfast, Li Jianyue went back to her room to change. As soon as she changed, she knocked on Mosen's door, but there was no one there. Downstairs, Li Moyun was lying on the sofa watching TV. When he saw Li Jianyue coming down, he glanced at Li Mosen, who was obviously much more handsome than usual. With one look, he knew that they were going to sneak out without him again. He was so angry that he decided to follow them secretly later. Li Mosen was obviously in a good mood today. He just sat on the sofa with his legs crossed and a smile on his face. He looked at Li Jianyue, who was slowly walking down the stairs, and the meaning in his blue eyes became more profound. Li Jianyue happily jumped over, took Li Mosen's arm and said, "Brother Mosen, let's go." Looking at the two of them, Li Moyun quickly jumped down, and the fat on his body also trembled. He hurriedly asked, "Where are you going?" Li Jianyue turned back and stuck out her tongue at him. She made a face and said, "I'm going out with Brother Mosen. I won't take you this time." Li Moyun shook his head and said, "All of you are so well dressed. The handsome man and the beautiful woman are not taking me. If I didn't know better, I would think that you are going on a date." Hearing Li Moyun's words, Li Mosen was obviously in a better mood. He took Li Jinyue's hand and said, "Let's go." The meeting place set by Quan Jingyi and Qin Shizhao was under the LED of the World Trade Square. Along the way, Li Jinyue did not pester Li Mosen to tell him where they were going to play later. Li Mosen was in a good mood today. When they were about to reach the World Trade Square, he patted the slightly nervous Li Jinyue beside him and asked, "Where are you going to play?" Li Jinyue turned around and looked at the big clock in the World Trade Square not far away. "I don't know yet. I'll ask them when we get there." "Them?" Li Mosen's eyes darkened. "Who else?" Li Jinyue didn't hide it from him, but she carefully looked at his expression and said, "It's she?" Before she could finish speaking, the phone in Li Jinyue's pocket suddenly rang. Li Jinyue stopped talking and took out her phone to answer the call. Jinyue, are you guys here? Jingyi and I have arrived. We will wait for you by the roadside. We're almost there. We just passed the traffic light. Wow, then look out the window. Can you see me waving? This book comes from Chapter 2279. When Li Jinyue heard that, she turned around and looked out of the car window. However, they had just passed the traffic light and the traffic was so heavy that she couldn't see anything. Li Jinyue said, "There are so many cars. I can't see you. Where are you?" On the other side of the phone, Qin Shizhao burst out laughing. "Jinyue, you're so cute. Of course you can't see us. I'll hang up first. We're just by the roadside. You'll see us soon." "All right." After hanging up the phone, Li Jinyue turned back to continue talking to Li Mosen. Li Mosen's face was gloomy as he looked out of the car window. After a while, the car stopped by the roadside of the World Trade Square. Li Jinyue grabbed his arm and shook it. "Brother Mosen, we're here." Li Mosen looked down at her and asked in a low voice, "Why didn't you tell me that there were others here?" Li Jinyue shrank her neck and said guiltily, You didn't ask." Moreover, she was also afraid that Li Mosen wouldn't come out with her if she said it. What Qin Shizhao said on WeChat made sense. She and Quan Jingyi still had more than 2 years to graduate. Could it be that she had been hiding from Quan Jingyi for more than 2 years? Brother Mosen only misunderstood Quan Jingyi. As long as Brother Mosen spent more time with Quan Jingyi, he would know that Quan Jingyi was a good person. At this moment, Qin Shizhao's voice suddenly came from not far away. "Jinyue?" Li Jinyue and Li Mosen looked up at the same time. Qin Shizhao and Quan Jingyi were waving at them not far away. Seeing the two of them, Li Mosen seemed to have guessed it long ago and was not surprised at all. However, his expression also became more and more unsightly. Li Jinyue also waved at them, not daring to look at Li Mosen's expression. However, Li Mosen's gaze was too strong. She couldn't ignore it at all. She could only look up at him pitifully. She saw that Li Mosen pursed his lips and didn't say a word in the end. "Jinyue." Qin Shizhao ran over and immediately held Li Jinyue's arm intimately, but she looked at Li Mosen eagerly. Senior Li looked so handsome dressed up today. Qin Shizhao's eyes were burning. Perhaps because her eyes were too hot, Li Mosen frowned slightly and looked over. Qin Shizhao suddenly panicked. She quickly smiled and said, "Hello, Senior Li." Li Mosen grunted coldly and turned his head away. He did not have a good impression of this girl, not only because of her but also because of the boy in front of him. Facing Li Mosen's unfriendly gaze, Quan Jingyi acted as if he didn't see it at all. He slightly curled his lips and imitated Qin Shizhao's greeting, "Hello, Senior." This "Senior" was nothing to the two girls, but between the two boys, it was extremely provocative. Especially after the confrontation at school last time, Quan Jingyi's "Senior" at this moment was more like a reminder of the fact that he was about to graduate. Once he graduated, he would no longer be able to control how he interacted with Li Jinyue in school. Li Mosen looked at him expressionlessly, his eyes as cold as ice. Quan Jingyi put his hands in his trouser pockets and looked at him with a calm expression, but his eyes were full of provocation. Just now, Li Jinyue and Qin Shizhao didn't notice the strangeness between the two of them, but at this moment, they could already feel the undercurrent surging between the two of them. Li Jinyue nervously grabbed Li Mosen's arm. She was afraid that Li Mosen would make a move. She hurriedly walked up and stood between them. "The weather is so good today, huh?" Chapter 2280. Quan Jingyi raised his eyebrows, looked up at the sky and said, "It's pretty good. Let's go." Li Jinyue looked up at Li Mosen worriedly. She suddenly regretted doing so. Li Mosen's gloomy expression disappeared. He asked her as usual, "Where are you going to play?" Before Li Jianyue could speak, Qin Shizao had already answered. Genie's friend opened a bar. Genie said he wanted to take us to play. Li Mosen looked up. Qin Shizao seemed to know what he was going to say. She immediately smiled and said, Senior Li, don't worry. The environment of the bar is very good. We're just going to sit. We don't have to drink. She thought that Li Mosen would refuse, but this time, Li Mosen was more relaxed and calm than usual. He pulled out his arm that was grabbed by Li Jianyue, put his hands in his trouser pockets and said, Let's go. Li Jianyue looked at her hands blankly. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed by someone. She was extremely sad. Was Brother Mosen angry with her? The location of the bar was 2 streets away from the World Trade Square. Although it was daytime and morning, there were quite a lot of people because it was Sunday. Quan Jingyi's friends were already waiting in the bar. After the 4 of them arrived, the boss arranged seats for them. The bar had just opened. The environment in the bar was very good. However, because it was daytime, there was only a folk singer singing softly with a guitar. The 4 of them sat not far from the stage. After sitting down, Li Mosen seemed to be attracted by the folk singers singing and focused on the singer singing on the stage. Li Jianyue was in a bad mood and was not as active as before. She sat beside Li Mosen and drank her drink. Quan Jingyi, who was sitting opposite, also drank his drink silently, but his eyes were fixed on the dejected Li Jianyue. Qin Shizao, who was sitting next to Quan Jingyi, was also staring at Li Mosen and Li Jianyue. But when she saw Li Mosen's expression, her heart fell into a bottomless abyss. Now, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Li Mosen was angry with Li Jianyue, but his current appearance was clearly a reaction after being jealous. Could siblings be jealous like lovers? Qin Shizao suddenly thought of what she had heard about Li Mosen's background. He didn't seem to have any blood relationship with Li Jianyue. How could siblings who were not related by blood be called siblings? Just then, Li Mosen, who was watching the performance, suddenly stood up. Li Jianyue looked up at him reflexively. Brother Mosen, where are you going? Li Mosen looked down at her, then looked up at Quan Jingyi. His blue eyes were unusually indifferent. Go to the bathroom. After that, he left his seat and walked towards the bathroom. When Li Mosen walked around the corner, Quan Jingyi also stood up and said, You 2 play first. I'll go to the bathroom too. He then followed Li Mosen. Li Jianyue's heart immediately tensed up when she saw the 2 of them moving one after the other. She stood up and wanted to follow them, but Qin Shizao reached out to hold her back and said with a smile, Jianyue, don't follow them. Since there is a misunderstanding between them, we have to find a suitable occasion to resolve it. The 2 of us will listen to Jingyi and play here. Li Jianyue blinked and asked, Can I do that? Of course. But Qin Shizao put down the drink in her hand and stood up to sit beside Li Jianyue. She whispered, I think Senior Li is so strange. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2281. Li Jianyue asked in confusion, What's so strange about Brother Mosen? Qin Shizao smiled and said, I just feel that something is strange. I have some doubts in my heart. Jianyue, you can't be angry when I say it. Qin Shizao's words were mysterious, and Li Jianyue's curiosity was aroused. She nodded and said okay. Qin Shizao tilted her head and whispered into her ear, Don't you think it's strange that Senior Li hates Jingyi for no reason? Li Jianyue said without hesitation, Because Quan Jingyi has a bad reputation in school. Not only Brother Mosen, but others also have a big misunderstanding about him. I don't think so. Qin Shizao shook her head. She sat up straight and let out a sigh. As if she had gathered a lot of courage, she said, Actually, I seem to know a little bit of the inside story. Li Jianyue's eyes widened. What inside story? Qin Shizao winked and smiled awkwardly. When Jingyi was your desk mate, Senior Li once threatened Jingyi not to affect your studies. You should know Jingyi's personality. He hates being threatened the most, so he said some very unpleasant words and offended Senior Li. Senior Li privately caused trouble for Jingyi. But at that time, Jingyi didn't have a good relationship with you. Later, after he got along well with you, Jingyi decided to ignore Senior Li's hostility towards him. I thought that since it had been so long, Senior Li wouldn't cause trouble for Jingyi anymore. I didn't expect him to still hate Jingyi so much now. After saying that, Qin Shizao looked at Li Jianyue's incredulous expression and asked, Think about it carefully. When Senior Li was with you the first time he saw Jingyi, did he show that he was very unfriendly to him? Brother Mosen isn't such a person. Li Jianyue stood up and said angrily, Don't talk nonsense. Ever since she was young, Li Mosen had always been a gentle brother in Li Jianyue's heart. No matter what she did wrong, Brother Mosen would comfort her and tolerate her. She had been in school for so long, but she had never seen Brother Mosen make trouble for her classmates. Qin Shizhao stood up with embarrassment and held Li Jianyue's hand. She said, I just made a guess based on what happened between the two of them before. Senior Li hates Jingyi so much now. It's probably because of what happened before. I won't. Li Jianyue couldn't stand listening to others slandering Li Mosen. Her fair face tensed up and she said very seriously, Shizhao, we are friends now, but you can't slander Brother Mosen like this. I don't know Senior Li well enough. If I'm wrong, I apologize to you first. Qin Shizhao held Li Jianyue's hand tightly and said with a worried face, Actually, I don't want to say these things to you. Jingyi told me yesterday not to say so much to you, but after I saw how cold Senior Li was to you just now, I still felt that I had to tell you because we are friends. The more Qin Shizhao spoke, the more mysterious it became. When Li Jianyue was about to stop her again, Qin Shizhao said again, Actually, I suspect that Senior Li likes you. Li Jianyue said matter-of-factly, Of course Brother Mosen likes me. We are family. I'm not talking about that kind of like. Qin Shizhao said awkwardly and ambiguously, It's between a man and a woman. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2282. Hearing her words, Li Jianyue was so angry that she laughed out loud. Are you crazy? He's my brother. Don't you think it's strange? Qin Shizhao said, How can a brother control his sister's social space like this? You've explained it to him so many times, but he's still very unhappy every time he sees you with Jingyi. Just like when we met just now, did Senior Li ignore you because he was angry? Has he been like this before? And as far as I know, you and Senior Li are not related by blood at all. Qin Shizhao took a deep breath and pulled Li Jianyue, who was in a daze, to sit down on the sofa and said, Jianyue, I like you as much as Jingyi. I said so much because I treat you as a good friend. If you don't believe me, you can see later. Senior Li and Jingyi are definitely fighting in the bathroom. The reason why Qin Shizhao dared to say so confidently was because she knew Quan Jingyi's character, which seemed sloppy but would never back down. She could tell that Quan Jingyi liked Li Jianyue. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been paying attention to the dejected Li Jianyue from the moment he came in. Li Mosen's face was very ugly from the beginning, and he even shook off Li Jianyue's hand, which meant that the anger in his heart had reached a critical point. This fight was inevitable. But to Li Jianyue, her words were even more unreal than Mars hitting Earth. Brother Mosen had always been a very gentle person since he was young. He had never changed. He was like this to everyone. He wouldn't fight with Quan Jingyi. Li Jianyue was a little angry and said, Shizhao, since you said that we are friends, I hope you won't talk nonsense like this anymore. If you continue like this, I will be angry. After saying that, she stood up and took out her phone while saying, I'll go find Brother Mosen now and explain the misunderstanding to him. Li Jianyue made a call and walked towards the bathroom. Qin Shizhao, who was sitting on the sofa, didn't stop her. She picked up the drink on the table and took a sip. She turned around and stared at Li Jianyue's figure with a sneer on her face. Often, the truest words were the easiest to be treated as lies. But when she found out that it wasn't a lie, it was the most interesting time. Qin Shizhao sneered and muttered, Li Jianyue, Li Mosen will be mine sooner or later. Li Mosen's call went through, but no one picked up. Although Li Jianyue didn't believe Qin Shizhao's nonsense, she was still a little worried that Brother Mosen and Quan Jingyi would really fight. With that thought in mind, she quickened her pace toward the bathroom. However, before she could reach the bathroom door, she saw the bar owner supporting Quan Jingyi out of the bathroom. Although Quan Jingyi was being supported, other than the scars at the corners of his mouth and eyes, he was not injured. Quan Jingyi acted as if nothing had happened. He walked over while talking and laughing with the boss. However, when she saw the injury on Quan Jingyi's face, she suddenly became nervous. Quan Jingyi, she called out. Quan Jingyi and the bar owner looked up at the same time. Li Jianyue quickly ran up to him. Quan Jingyi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth as if he was trying to hide it. He smiled and said, Why did you follow me? Did you fight with Brother Mosen? She asked worriedly. The smile on Quan Jingyi's lips froze slightly, but he didn't deny it. He said in a lazy and calm voice, How can we solve the problem between men without using our fists? When Li Mosen heard this, his pupils shrank and he blurted out, What about Brother Mosen? Download address, phone reading. Chapter 2283. Seeing the worried look on Li Jianyue's face, the smile on Quan Jingyi's face froze. The bar owner looked at Li Jianyue and asked, Jingy, are you two fighting because of this girl? Hearing the boss's words, Li Jianyue understood without asking any more. She ran past Quan Jingy anxiously and rushed into the bathroom without a care in the world. Brother Mosen. The sound of water kept ringing. In front of the sink, Li Mosen's tall body was slightly bent, and his face was full of water droplets. He looked down at the water in the sink in a daze. Hearing Li Jianyue's voice, he subconsciously looked back. Because she was too anxious, Li Jianyue's heart was beating very fast. She panted and looked at Li Mosen, who was unharmed, and breathed a sigh of relief. Brother Mosen wasn't hurt? Turning off the tap, Li Mosen stood up and asked, Why did you come in? Brother Mosen, are you okay? Li Jianyue ran forward quickly, grabbed his hand and asked, Are you hurt? Li Mosen unnaturally pulled out his hand that was grabbed by her and put it behind his back. No. Although he had already treated her like this once when he came, no matter how fast he withdrew his hand this time, Li Jianyue still noticed his injury. Li Jianyue angrily grabbed his hand. When she saw the broken skin on the back of Li Mosen's hand, her eyes turned red with heartache. Why did you fight? Li Jianyue asked loudly with red eyes. If you asked Li Mosen what he was most afraid of in his life, it was probably Li Jianyue's tears. After seeing the tears in Li Jianyue's eyes, Li Mosen could no longer pretend to be indifferent. I just gestured a few times. I didn't really fight. Gestured a few times? Why is your hand bleeding? Li Mosen reached out to wipe the tears from the corner of her eyes, and a gentle smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I accidentally hit the side door. Looking at Li Mosen's natural movements and gentle eyes when facing her, Li Jianyue's excitement suddenly stopped, and her mind involuntarily thought of what Qin Shizhao had just said. Some things, if not deliberately mentioned by others, could not be seen at all. But after being mentioned by Qin Shizhao, Li Jianyue's heart inexplicably panicked. She also vaguely felt that Brother Mosen was too intimate with her. Thinking of this, Li Jianyue became more and more panicked. No. Li Mosen was her biological brother. Brother Mosen was just very good to her and simply loved her as a sister. She couldn't believe Qin Shizhao's nonsense. Li Jianyue's personality was too simple. She would often show her worries on her face. The struggle in her heart was also shown on her face. Li Mosen looked at her suddenly pale face and thought that she was thinking about the fight between him and Quan Jingy. He pinched her cheek and said, It's really just a few moves. Don't cry. Because of Li Jianyue's nervousness and concern for him, the depression he felt when he first came had disappeared. As usual, Li Mosen put his arm around her shoulders and was about to take her out of the men's bathroom. At this moment, Li Jianyue suddenly raised her hand and pushed his arm away. Li Mosen was slightly stunned and asked, What's wrong? Li Jianyue couldn't hide the panic on her face. She stuttered to find an excuse and said, Brother Mosen, let's go home first? I don't want to play anymore. I need to go home first. Hearing her words, Li Mosen showed a gentle smile on his face and nodded. Okay. Download address, mobile reading. Chapter 2284. When they left, they didn't say goodbye to Quan Jingy and Qin Shizhao. But after returning home, Li Jianyue locked herself in the room and didn't come down until dinner. Su Qianxi was worried about her daughter, so she asked Nanny Rong to make supper for Li Jianyue and carried it upstairs. At this time, Li Mosen suddenly came over and said, Mom, I'm going back to my room. Let me send it to Ursu. Hearing this, Su Qianxi thought for a moment and said while handing him the supper, Ask her if she's not feeling well. If she's not feeling well, tell me quickly. Li Mosen nodded and said, Okay. Upstairs, Li Jianyue had been sleeping since she returned to her room. However, in fact, she had been in a daze and hadn't fallen asleep. She had never thought much about things, but this afternoon she thought about a lot of things. As she thought more and more, many things that she didn't care about before became very obvious. Li Jianyue didn't want to believe what Qin Shizhao said, but every time she thought of Brother Mosen, she couldn't help but think about it. Just as she was curled up in bed, someone suddenly knocked on the bedroom door. Ursu, Mom asked me to send you supper. Hearing Li Mosen's voice, Li Jianyue's eyes widened. It was the first time she had faced Li Mosen and she looked very flustered. Li Jianyue quickly sat up and said, Brother Mosen, I'm going to bed. I don't want to eat supper. Li Mosen said, Open the door first if you don't want to eat. I'm going to bed. Brother Mosen, you should go to bed early too. After that, she immediately lay down and huddled in the thin quilt. She shouted at the door, Brother Mosen, I really don't want to eat supper. Tell Mom that I'm fine. At the door, listening to her trembling voice, Li Mosen stood for a long time with the supper in his hand before turning around and leaving. The next day, Li Jianyue got up with panda eyes. Downstairs, Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi had already sat down for breakfast. Because it was the weekend, it was rare for the family to have breakfast together. Seeing her coming down, Li Moyun waved at Li Jianyue with 2 chicken legs in his hands. "Ursu, lazy girl, today's chicken legs are all mine." Looking at Li Moyun's excited look, Li Jianyue made a face at him listlessly and said, "Little fatty, you will become a big fatty sooner or later." Just as she was about to retract her gaze, she suddenly caught a glimpse of Li Mosen's gaze. The pair of deep blue eyes stared at her motionlessly, like the scorching sun, burning Li Jianyue's skin. Li Jianyue couldn't avoid it in time and hurriedly lowered her head. She quickly finished her breakfast and went upstairs. For the whole day, other than eating time, Li Jianyue almost shut herself in the room. Every time Li Mosen wanted to talk to her, she would be like a mouse that had seen a cat. She would hide in a hurry. School reopened on Monday. Li Mosen was waiting for her downstairs as usual, but when Nanny Rong came out of the kitchen, she told him in surprise, "Jianyue has already gone to school." Li Mosen frowned slightly. "When did she go?" Nanny Rong thought about it and said, "Almost half an hour." Hearing Nanny Rong's words, Li Mosen's face instantly darkened. He pursed his lips and left the house with his school bag. Li Jianyue didn't know how she spent Monday. Her mind was full of confusion. She sat in her seat in a daze. Even when the teacher asked her questions, she couldn't answer properly. Download address, mobile reading. Chapter 2285. Finally, school was over. As soon as the bell rang, Li Jianrui couldn't wait to grab her bag and stand up. Just as she was about to leave, her wrist was suddenly grabbed. Li Jianrui looked back at Quan Jingyi on her wrist and asked uneasily, "What's wrong?" Li Jianrui was absent-minded for the whole day. Quan Jingyi also observed her for the whole day and saw her expression in his heart. The slender wrist in the palm didn't feel like a person's bones, but the skin was delicate and smooth. Quan Jingyi's eyes unconsciously glanced at her wrist, and suddenly thought of what he said to Li Mosen in the bathroom. Sure enough, as she expected, the serious man of the school was really interested in Li Jianrui, his sister. He just said a few words to provoke the mixed-race genius and made his blood boil. He made a move on him and did not deny his love for his sister. Quan Jingyi was not surprised, but he knew in his heart that it was impossible for them to be siblings. Li Jianrui was such an innocent and straightforward girl. It was as hard for her to suddenly accept her brother's feelings for her. Seeing Li Jianrui, who was depressed all day, Quan Jingyi wondered if Li Mosen really couldn't help but confess to his sister. He looked at the uneasy girl in front of him and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. If Li Mosen really confessed to her, keeping it a secret was the best way for Li Jianrui to deal with it now. If he asked directly, it would make her even more panicked. Seeing that everyone in the class had left the classroom, Quan Jingyi only pulled her and didn't speak. Li Jianrui became anxious. What if she met Brother Mosen at the school gate? It was obviously Qin Shizao's nonsense, but now she was thinking about it and did something stupid to avoid Brother Mosen. How could she explain it when she saw Brother Mosen later? Thinking of the scene of meeting Li Mosen, Li Jianrui felt embarrassed. "Quan Jingyi, do you have something to say? If not, I'll go first." She pulled her wrist and said. Quan Jingyi didn't let go of his hand. He stood up with his bag and turned to hold her hand. "Let's go together." When Li Jianrui heard the words, "Let's go together," she said without thinking, "No." After saying that, she and Quan Jingyi were both stunned. The atmosphere was somewhat awkward. Li Jianrui was stunned because when she heard that sentence, the first reaction in her mind was that Brother Mosen would be angry if he saw it. She couldn't make Brother Mosen angry. His heartbeat became frantic at this moment. She must be too tired to become like this. Li Jianrui withdrew her hand awkwardly and said, I didn't mean anything by it. Quan Jingyi, I'm going home first. See you tomorrow." After saying that, she grabbed her bag and quickly ran to the door. From the school building to the school gate, Li Jianrui used all her might to run 800 meters. She squeezed into the first group of people to run out of the school gate. When she got home, Li Jianrui found an excuse to do her homework and locked herself in her room. There wasn't a lot of homework after class, but because he was thinking about other things, his homework was a mess. She laid her head on the table and sighed. She suddenly hated herself. She had clearly warned herself not to care about Qin Shizao's nonsense, but she still couldn't help but care. Sigh. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2286. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Add to this sight Li Jianyue raised her head and looked at the tightly shut door. She felt a little uneasy. Who is it? Ursu, it's time to eat, Daisa said. Li Jianyue heaved a sigh of relief and said, Okay, wait for me. Hurry up. All right, you can go first. Li Jianyue stood up and looked in the mirror. After making sure that she looked normal, she walked out. During the meal, Li Mosen sat opposite her. Li Jianyue kept her head down throughout the meal. Li Jianxian sensed that something was wrong. He looked at Mosen and asked in a low voice, Did they quarrel? Li Mosen's azure blue eyes were slightly deep. He did not answer and lowered his head to eat. Su Qianxi also noticed that something was wrong with Li Jianyue. She picked up a piece of her favorite dish and asked softly, Ursu, what's wrong? Are you in a bad mood? Nothing. Li Jianyue glanced at her mother, but when she looked up, she noticed Li Mosen's strong gaze. When she came back to her senses, she was already looking at him. Just like that, she met his gaze. Deep and sharp. As soon as Li Jianyue touched it, she felt as if she had been electrocuted. She lowered her head. Li Xiqing saw his daughter's action and subconsciously looked at Li Mosen. Li Mosen pursed his lips and lowered his head to continue eating. Li Xiqing frowned quietly. Li Jianrui was a simple-minded person. All her emotions were written on her face. On the other hand, Li Mosen seemed to have been influenced by the others in the family. Perhaps it was because he had been imitating Li Xiqing. Compared to Li Jianyue, his emotions were hidden too deeply. However, even if Li Mosen couldn't see anything, there was no doubt that there was a conflict between the two of them based on their attitudes. Soon Li Jianyue finished eating and left. She looked as if someone was chasing after her. Not long after Li Jianyue left, Li Mosen put down his bowl and stood up. I'm full too, he said. Li Jianxian was still eating. When Li Mosen stood up, he turned his head curiously and muttered, What's wrong with them today? Yu Chulin also found it strange. They must have quarreled. The young lady is probably throwing a tantrum. She'll be fine after some coaxing. Li Jianxian thought of his sister's temperament and nodded. That's true. Li Jianyue was a good-tempered person. She had perfectly inherited Su Qianxi's personality characteristics. Although she might occasionally be stupid, it was too easy to coax her back. No one cared. However, no one had expected that their carelessness would lead to consequences that they could not accept. When Li Jianyue returned to her room, her mood was very low. Right now, she really couldn't face Brother Mosen properly. As soon as she saw Li Mosen, she felt very strange. Qin Shizao's words kept ringing in her heart, reminding her that Li Mosen might not just treat her as a brother and sister. Li Jianyue was so annoyed that she threw herself onto the bed. Knock knock. Someone knocked on the door again. Li Jianyue raised her head and asked loudly, Who is it? No answer. However, there was another knock on the door. Oh, is it brother? Li Jianyue stood up and reached out to open the door. When she saw Li Mosen, Li Jianyue's heart skipped a beat and she subconsciously wanted to close the door again. Li Mosen immediately stepped forward and blocked the door. Chapter 2287. Li Jianrui's heart seemed to be lifted up by him. She looked at him warily and said, Brother Mosen, what are you doing? The speed of her words was a little fast. The shock in her voice was very obvious. Li Mosen's heart seemed to be stabbed by something. He gritted his teeth and went forward to push the door open. Li Jianrui swallowed a mouthful of saliva and took a step back. She saw Li Mosen close the door and lock it. Then he walked towards her. He gritted his teeth slightly and said fiercely, Are you hiding from me? Li Jianrui rarely saw Li Mosen angry. Her heart beat faster and faster. She stepped back and said in fear, Brother Mosen, what's wrong with you? Don't be like this. I will be afraid. If you will be afraid, why are you hiding from me? Li Mosen's voice carried a hint of fierceness for the first time. Li Jianrui was stunned by the roar. Her heart was beating very fast. She said, Did that Quan Jingyi say something to you? Li Mosen sensed her panic and subconsciously made his tone sound a little softer. He walked forward and approached Li Jianrui. He said softly, What did he say? Tell me. Li Jianrui's heart was even more flustered. When she reacted, she immediately changed her words and said, It's not him. He didn't say anything to me. Even now you are still protecting him. Li Mosen seemed to be on the verge of a breakdown. He grabbed Li Jinrui's shoulders with both hands. What right does he have? What's so good about him? Li Jinrui, I am your brother. Now you know how to lie to me for the sake of a male classmate you have known for less than 3 months? His voice was a little loud and his tone was a little fierce. Li Jinrui had never seen Brother Mosen like this. Before she could come back to her senses, tears had already rushed out. No, it wasn't him who said it. It was, Shizao said it. Li Mosen saw her tears and finally regained his rationality. The rage in his heart was also comforted by her tears. He subconsciously let go. Li Mosen was a little annoyed. Sorry, I can't control myself. Don't cry. Sob, sob, sob. Li Jianhua finally couldn't help but cry. She looked at him and took a step back. Li Mosen looked at her repulsive look and felt a heartache. He approached her and reached out to wipe her tears. He said in a low voice, "Don't cry. Tell me, what did that Shizao say to you?" Seeing that Li Mosen seemed to have calmed down, she felt even more afraid in her heart. She choked and said, She said some very scary things. I don't want it to be true, but I don't dare to ask. So I don't dare to see you. I'm afraid." Hearing her words, Li Mosen felt more and more disgusted with Qin Shizao. That woman didn't look old, but from her eyes, it could be seen that she was definitely not a simple person. Li Jianhua was a simple-minded person. She was easily affected by her words. It must have been very scary. Li Mosen suppressed his anger and whispered, "What is it? Tell me. Don't be afraid." "Oh, if I tell you, you'll be angry." "I promise I won't be angry." "You were so fierce just now." Li Jianhua wiped her tears and said in an extremely aggrieved tone. "It was as if you wanted to hit me." Li Mosen sighed softly. "Even if I beat myself to death, I won't hit you, silly girl." Li Jianhua sniffled and stopped crying. She wanted to say something but stopped herself. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2288. Li Jianhua sniffled and stopped crying. She wanted to say something but stopped. After making sure that his expression was normal, he whispered, "I actually think that Shizao's words are nonsense. She said that you are not my biological brother. Maybe you don't just have a normal brother-sister relationship with me." Li Mosen's expression changed slightly, and he looked at Li Mosen. Li Jianhua's words successfully made Li Mosen's heart skip a beat. The secret that had been buried in his heart for a long time seemed to have been ruthlessly torn open. It was exposed to the sun and there was nowhere to hide. Seeing that Li Mosen was stunned, Li Jianhua didn't understand what he meant. She continued anxiously, "He said that you might like me. It's not the love between siblings, it's the love between boys and girls." I said, "How is it possible? We are siblings. How is it possible? It's a different kind of love. Shizao must have made a mistake, right?" Li Mosen's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. He looked down at the girl in front of him and his mind went blank. Li Jianhua's eyes were still as pure and clean as before. However, in his eyes, there was already a deep and greedy look. Li Mosen couldn't calm down. The only thought he had at this moment was, she found out, she knew. Had she finally found out the secret that was buried deep in his heart? Li Mosen looked at her, his Adam's apple moving up and down, his eyes burning. Li Jianhua subconsciously stepped back, her eyes wide. Even though Li Mosen didn't say anything, his eyes successfully made Li Jianhua feel uneasy. It couldn't be true, right? Li Jianhua's heart was in a mess. She said in a trembling voice, "Li Mosen, you can't." It was rare for Li Jianhua to call him by his full name. Li Mosen suddenly came to his senses. Only then did he realize that the girl in front of him had been scared to the point of retreating. Her eyes were filled with uneasiness. Li Mosen's heart beat faster. The excitement of being exposed and the heartache of being rejected intertwined. But at the same time, there was also the panic of not knowing what to do. What should he do? He shouldn't have let her know. But now that things had come to this, the impulse in his heart seemed to want to rush out, and he couldn't control it at all. He couldn't help himself. Just like how he couldn't control his anger, he couldn't control his desire to confess his love at this moment. However, the fear and rejection in Li Jianhua's eyes were like a sharp knife, deeply stabbing into his heart, causing all his impulses to be strangled in his throat. Li Mosen suppressed the pain in his heart and forced a smile. "How could that be? You're the only one who would believe that." Li Jianhua's heart did not calm down with his words. Instead, she looked at him doubtfully. Li Mosen sighed softly. "My silly girl, how could you believe such words?" What will you do without me in the future? She looked at Li Mosen and asked cautiously, is that right? I also think it's too weird. I said she has been thinking too much. How is it possible? We are a family. You are the older brother, so you are the older brother. Li Jianyue blinked her eyes, and the tension in her body relaxed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Li Mosen's heart felt as if it had been soaked in sulfuric acid. There was a piercing sound and the pain was unbearable. Who's your brother? I'm not. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2289. However, when he saw the joy on Li Jianyue's face, he swallowed the words in his mouth. Li Jianyue sniffed. Although there were still tears on her face, her relaxed look was obviously a different person from before. Li Mosen opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but nothing came out. He turned around and said in a light tone, "Don't think too much. I thought something was wrong. It's just a small matter." Li Jianyue was completely relieved. She was extremely annoyed. Yeah, this is impossible. I'm so stupid. Boo-hoo. Li Mosen felt as if his heart had been scratched once again. He couldn't stay any longer and said reluctantly, "Take a shower and go to bed early. I'm leaving." When Mosen came out, his movements were very fast. In a place where Li Jianyue couldn't see, his eyes were slightly red and his hands were trembling slightly. Li Mosen looked up and saw Li Jianqian. Li Jianqian looked at Li Mosen and was silent for a moment. He said, "What happened?" "Nothing," Li Mosen said casually and then prepared to leave. Li Jianqian said, "It doesn't seem like nothing happened. Let's talk." I said, "It's nothing." Li Mosen's tone was slightly low, with a hint of displeasure and warning. Li Jianqian was stunned. It seemed that Mosen's temper was much bigger than he had imagined. He had never seen him lose his temper since he was young. It turned out that it was just because he hadn't encountered it. Li Jianqian shook his head. "Dad is calling you." Li Mosen paused. "I don't know what's going on, but looking at Dad, it doesn't seem like he's looking for you to chat." Li Mosen's eyes darkened as he looked at Li Jianqian. Li Jianqian spread his hands. Li Mosen's lips pursed even tighter. He strode in the direction of the study. Li Xiqing was indeed there. Su Qinxi was writing in the study. She was twirling the brush, and the words under her hands were gentle and beautiful. And Li Xiqing was right next to her, grinding for her. At a glance, they looked like a couple in a painting. Su Qinxi had a slight smile on her face. Her face, which resembled Li Jianyue's, had a gentle glow. When she saw Li Mosen, she said, "Mosen, you're here." Only then did Li Xiqing look at Li Mosen. The gentleness on his face faded a little, and he turned to look at Li Mosen with a slightly serious expression. Li Mosen walked in. "Dad, Mom." She put down the pen and took the initiative to step aside. She carefully pinched the two corners of the calligraphy and let it blow in the air. The ink quickly dried. Li Xiqing sat in the main seat and asked casually, "Did you quarrel with Ursu?" "No." Li Mosen was obviously in low spirits. How could there be no such thing? Li Xiqing didn't care and packed up the inkstone for her. Unexpectedly, he heard his father say, "Dad, I've thought about it." Li Xiqing and Su Qinxi both looked over, surprised. Li Mosen seemed to be struggling and there was obvious pain in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if he couldn't make up his mind. But in the end he closed his eyes as if he had made a firm decision and said, "I'm willing to go abroad." Li Xiqing looked at him deeply. "Have you thought about it?" Su Qinxi's gentle smile turned into worry, and she subconsciously looked at her husband. Li Xiqing's face was expressionless. He looked at Li Mosen in front of him and didn't say anything. Li Mosen's face was struggling, but he didn't have the courage to speak again. He didn't want to. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2290. He didn't want to. He didn't want to. He didn't want to. But did he have a way out? Li Mosen asked himself in his heart. Now he only noticed a hint, and Li Jianyue was avoiding him. Then, if she noticed something in the future, Li Mosen felt that he might not be able to bear any alienation from her in the future. Just today he felt that he was about to go crazy. Perhaps he still needed a little more time and a little distance to calm himself down. Going abroad might not be the best choice. But it was the fastest way at present. He didn't even need to wait until he graduated from high school to study abroad. He could leave Li Jianyue and this family. Li Xiqing saw Li Mosen's indecisive look and knew that he must have made up his mind to come here and say such things to him. He was not in a hurry. He lowered his head and continued to busy himself. Seeing this, Su Qinxi couldn't help but look at Li Mosen and said, Mosin, why do you suddenly want to go abroad? Have you thought about it? This is not a small matter. Going abroad is equivalent to leaving home and parents. Not everyone can get used to it. As a mother, Su Qianxi, like many parents, hoped that their children could stay by their side. Such a hope was understandable, but Su Qianxi also knew that no matter which child it was, there would be a day when they would go out. And there would be a day when they would come back. Looking at his mother's eyes, Li Mosin was quiet for a moment and then said, "Mom, I've thought about it. I want to go abroad to study at the school that Dad mentioned before." "What?" Li Xiqing asked. Li Mosin didn't expect Li Xiqing to ask such a question. After being stunned for a moment, he looked down and said, "Because I've thought it through." "What have you thought through?" Li Xiqing put down the things in his hands and asked, "Tell me." Li Mosin actually didn't have many plans in mind. After being asked by Li Xiqing, he opened his mouth but didn't answer. Li Xiqing walked out from behind the desk and said slowly, "Mosin, you have always been calm, but today you are a little impulsive." Li Mosin was speechless. He was indeed a little impulsive. From the first words he said when he came in, he began to regret it. Unexpectedly, Li Xiqing saw through it immediately. Li Xiqing raised his hand and patted the shoulder in front of him that was almost parallel to his own. He said meaningfully, "Go back and think about it. Come to me with your study plan tomorrow. I'll give you 1 day. If you don't come to me by this time tomorrow, I'll pretend that you never came today." Li Mosin subconsciously straightened his back and looked at the painting hanging not far in front of him. He was slightly stunned. When she came back to her senses, he had already walked to her side. Taking the calligraphy from her hands, he whispered, "Where are you going to hang it?" Su Qianxi's attention quickly shifted from Li Mosin to the calligraphy and painting. She was a little embarrassed when she heard what Li Xiqing said. "It's so ugly. Don't hang it up." "You're not ugly. Even Grandpa praised you for your willpower. You're very good looking." "What does good concentration have to do with writing?" "Only people with strong willpower can write well," Li Xiqing said matter-of-factly. "I'll have it mounted tomorrow." She blushed. "Don't mislead the child." "That's the truth," Li Xiqing said with a smile in his eyes. He put the calligraphy and painting on the side table. "Let's go back to the room." Bookmark for easier reading. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.